OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
It's 7:30. You're very welcome along to OTB AM. Jarno with you all the way through until 10 this morning. Are Liverpool fans really happy that the week is long and slow, or are they living life, their best life at the moment, Owen? What is it?
Living their best life.
Is it?
Without question. If you can't realise that this is the best season of your life, then you're probably doing something wrong.
And the greatest team they've ever had and the best squad they've ever had.
Yeah. I think the long weeks are the good weeks.
Do you think Jurgen Klopp was watching OTB AM last week when I was saying you should pick your B team? Put the B team out and see what happens.
Yeah, no, 100%.
The only thing that matters now is the Champions League. Jurgen, I know, you've probably thought about a lot of things, but you probably haven't thought about this. And it was just when Nathan was being a bit of a dick, he was like, I can't be on that guy's side.
In the meantime, we did have a few injuries being inflicted upon Liverpool.
Exactly, as we predicted.
Yeah.
You can get on board this bandwagon if you want.
Of course. Our show has essentially inspired another 3 points for Liverpool Football Club. I don't think the injuries were entirely to blame or explain the midfield that they started with last night. So maybe he was always going to shuffle the deck regardless of what was going to happen.
It was quite the shuffle.
Yeah.
It was gunslinger territory. It was like, I had somebody immediately after the game on Saturday, tweet me about how disappointed I must be that my one out of the four theory was blown up. And I was like, not
what was your 1 out of 4 theory?
It's like, what if they only end up with one trophy? Is it a good season or a bad season?
Yeah.
What is it? Good season or bad season? Now, obviously, if they only end up with the 2 domestic cups, is it good season or bad season? The cups from the UK, the domestic cups.
Yeah.
Is it a good season or bad season?
Well, I presume the fact that you're asking this means that you think that the answer is bad season.
I don't actually. I don't. I think that all that you care about as a sports fan should be that you're in the game and that the team represents who you are and that you love them. That's like...
That's not all that matters, though. Winning is a pretty big part of all of this as well.
It doesn't matter anymore.
It does, though. It really does. Winning does. It has a significant part. Otherwise, sport just wouldn't exist.
Look, it's obviously the reason that we play the game is to give out medals and trophies at the end. I understand that. However, every season there is one team in most sports that ends the season thinking, okay, that was a good season, if that's the only metric. But Liverpool fans must feel alive. And if they'd only ended up with winning the Carling Coca-Cola Carabao on penalties with Caoimhín Kelleher being the hero, the rest of the season is not a failure, even though they get beaten in the cup final, losing the last day of the season, they get beaten in the cup final. I would argue.
Yeah.
They've been thrilling.
But the whole point of being a Liverpool fan, I would suggest, is the sense of exceptionalism, the fact that we are a team that are the one team. Like, you're right, there can only be one team who wins all of these competitions, but Liverpool fans want to be that one team. And of course, just because you're not that one team doesn't mean it's a failure of a season. It just makes the end of the season a little bit of a failure, that's all. But it would mean you would lose to the FA Cup final. It would mean you would lose the Champions League final. So that'd be 2 games that you'd have lost.
Wouldn't you feel alive as it happened?
Yes, of course. That's a different thing.
It's not anymore. It's not. It's all you want is to feel alive watching sport. After the pandemic, a full crowd. If we win or lose, if this is the best representation of who we are.
Yeah, but you're potentially coming at it from a different angle, though.
If La Rochelle beat Leinster in an absolutely cracker of a cup final, I think Leinster fans should still feel we've been alive. This is the best representation that we've ever seen from an Irish rugby team. Like, really, that semi-final performance was as good as anything. And if it's a crap match and it's an arm wrestle and they don't perform, that's different.
I guess so. I do think that in the moment the journey doesn't matter, or the feeling alive bit doesn't matter, because you are alive. Your senses are heightened, and that thing that you're feeling is pain.
How often do you feel alive?
Well, but you see, that's not what you feel in the moment.
We coast through our lives.
Yes.
On this hurtling rock, perpetually spinning, feeling nothing except
drowsy,
except addicted to our phones and slightly over-caffeinated from time to time.
Yeah.
There's no meaning.
Your brain is fried most of the time.
Time is a flat circle, right? And then sometimes something random happens and you're like, holy shit, that was amazing. Especially if you go to matches.
Liverpool have played what it's going to be 63 games this season. They're probably feeling a bit drowsy and overly caffeinated and maybe not looking at their phones, but I'm not sure is feeling alive how they would feel at the end of the season if they'd come away with one trophy.
How are the fucking TikTok generation ever going to feel alive? How?
By getting
Their brain's being sucked out slowly.
500,000 views on each TikTok.
Completely addictive.
Yeah, that's how you feel. That's how you feel alive, I think.
So
An addiction to something, and that serotonin hit.
Andy Mitten always makes an interesting point about the match-going fans and the online fans and how toxic the online thing is, right? Like, if Liverpool had lost those games, you know there would have been some clowns going, "Oh, Klopp's a loser," and it's like he has given your puny existence some temporary meaning. Get down on your knees and pray at the altar of Jurgen Klopp.
Yeah, like
A little bit how I feel about Glenn Ryan, to be honest.
yeah.
We feel alive again.
Do you?
Yeah.
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 Because you beat Westmeath by 3 points.
No, because it means something.
Yeah.
Because it genuinely means something. It's not nothing anymore. It was
I
nothing
get
for a
that.
couple of seasons there. It was like, oh, it's a long old journey in the car, isn't it? No.
But that's the whole point. So that's what I said a second ago, that you're coming at it from a different perspective to the Liverpool fans. You're coming at it as an Aston Villa fan, as a Kildare fan. Unfortunately
Losers.
for you,
A lifetime of losing.
getting a win
Me
to
and-
loss
me and
ratio
David
of
Brady.
better than 1-1 would be a good return for your season. Whereas Liverpool are operating at a much higher plane, and once you're in a position, you want to keep climbing, and you will never be satisfied with the journey unless you are an Aston Villa fan. I'm just picking Aston Villa there arbitrarily because it's you, but I think for Liverpool fans, the journey, they've gone on a journey every single season under Jurgen Klopp, and it's about more than just a journey at this point, isn't it? Because they've put themselves into a pretty historic position. They're not going to win the league. I'd be surprised if they did, but if they came away with the Champions League, the Carabao Cup and the FA Cup, I think that makes the journey a special journey, as wanky as that sounds.
In this one instance, I think that perhaps they do have the opportunity to become an all-time great team, because any team that wins 2 Champions Leagues is always considered one of the all-time great teams. If you win multiples, you're like, because like none of the Man United teams did it, for example. This is the same team really that won the last Champions League, and if they do it, then they're like, oh, how many Champions Leagues did you win, Ferguson? Oh, with the same team, obviously you were able to do more than one. Oh no, sorry, totally different team. Okay, they're up there with the Milan team. They're up there with, they're not quite at the Ajax, Bayern Munich triple winning teams, but they're getting there, right? They're reaching that level of all-time greatness. So I see what's on offer, but I also would argue that the whole point of this, the whole point of like falling in love with the sport as a child and then following it through and spending all your money and all your time thinking about nothing but football is for moments where your team are in it. And sometimes you lose, because that's the game.
I do think that people who aren't Liverpool fans would be insanely jealous of what Liverpool are experiencing right now, regardless of how many trophies they win, and that is the journey they're on. I'm just making the point that you can't mask the disappointment if it doesn't happen for them in the big moments by saying that it's
disappointment is the opposite of feeling great, though. That's better to have loved and lost than never to have loved.
And you can't feel great unless you felt bad once upon a time, or you won't be able to appreciate the high.
Exactly.
And all the people who actually play the game say that they remember the lowest moments more, but those low moments probably make you appreciate the better moments all that more. So it's the same for a Liverpool fan, I suspect. And maybe one of those low moments was Tottenham a couple of weeks ago, but it was a 1-1 draw against the 4th best team in the league. It wasn't exactly a low.
OTB AM is brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. Aaron Kelly says there's no way Ger is not just trolling. I mean, I'm not. I'm like...
Ger's gone away and found himself yesterday. He took a day off yesterday and found his soul.
Well, he was always there. Just
never present.
It needed to be located. Noel says Ger's right. The journey is very important as well. Paul McGee says the point is a valid one. Not too long ago, Liverpool weren't anywhere close to competing. As long as we can beat the number 1 team, we don't have to be number 1. Come on, Redmen. It's all about the journey, not the destination, says Patsy O.B. These last 7 years with Klopp at the helm have been amazing. Win, lose or draw.
Does this season kind of feel like destination season though?
Certainly, what's up for grabs is history. Like, there have been, there was did Valencia reach 3 Champions League finals in a row or something like that? 2 in a row anyway. Like, if they'd won them both, we would be talking about the incredible achievement at that time. Or if Atletico had won 2 of those Champions League finals, then we will be talking about that team as an all-time great team. But that's what's on offer, and I think that's why this matters so much, and I think that's why he played the B team last night, because it was the right thing to do.
Yeah. Also, I suspected he thought that his B team probably had enough in the tank to beat Southampton, which they did. and by doing that, then you give yourself a chance of beating Southampton and of beating Real Madrid and winning on the last day of the season. So I think it was just smart management, and I think that in hindsight, obviously, he got it right, although it was, I think even Jamie Carragher said that it was a lucky enough goal, or a goal with a fair degree of luck attached to it anyway for Joel Matip's winner last night.
It's 7:40. Let's tell you what's coming up between now and 10 o'clock on the show. Busy show, great show lined up for you. Some top quality guests. Our GAA Power Rankings are coming in 5 minutes. Tommy Walsh at 8:10. It was a seismic weekend in the hurling. We'll get his reaction to that and hear what he thinks is coming next. Sports pages. We also have the virtual insanity for the PGA. Is the PGA this week a little bit under the radar? Are you a little bit kind of? Oh, that happened quickly. Keith Wood at 8:50. Phil Egan looking back on last night at 9:10, and Carl Dennehy talking about Rashida Adeleke, who is going to be a global superstar, hopefully, and is on the verge of it. Kieran Cuddy's sister had the record for 15 years.
No way.
Yeah. Joanne Cuddy.
I did not know they were related.
All right, there you go. The name is the surname is the same. Sometimes that can mean people are related. You know,
it certainly can. Yeah, and especially in this country of ours. Did you know that Ireland is a small country?
Very small. Mm-hmm. Yeah. They are related to the Cudahy's of Kilkenny. Do we want to do Agatha Christie now?
Will we? I mean, the power rankings can wait.
People demand it.
Power rankings can wait, because yesterday I think was one of, well, actually no, I was going to say it was one of the more extraordinary days, but I think every single day kind of blends into one sort of mould of the extraordinary. Yesterday was, I guess, the one with the most footballing tint to it, considering you had Jamie Vardy and Wayne Rooney in court for the first time together. It was the first time Jamie Vardy had gone to court.
So Jamie Vardy knew he was going to court this week and still banged in 2 goals.
Was it Phil Egan out in the office, or was it Cullum who said that actually this whole thing might be motivating Jamie Vardy, that Phil said that this is all Jamie Vardy's master plan to try and give himself some sort of negative motivation to have another bunch of fans hate him so that he will score more goals, because Jamie Vardy feasts on the misery of others.
Do you think he'll continue to score goals in League One and the non-league up to 45? He'll still be playing professional football at 45, scoring 40 goals in the Eastern Conference.
He will be like Michael Eoin, embarrassing the 17-year-old goalkeeper. Right,
except for real.
Except for real.
Yeah.
100%. I'd say he just loves scoring goals and embarrassing defenders, and he will continue to do that. But when Rooney was in court yesterday, and he said, "Me sitting in this courtroom is the first time I'm hearing almost everything on this case. This week is really the first time I've had any understanding of what happened." It's like when Rooney gets home after work in 2019, he's like, "Anything happen with your day?" Nah, not much.
Hey Rio, any chance you could pick me up in the morning?
So there was one kind of moment just before we get into Euro 2016 yesterday, which was quite interesting. It's alleged that there was another party leaking stories to the press about Colleen Rooney. And Rebecca Vardy's agent, Caroline Watt, who's been one of the stars of this whole thing, had said it's probably someone like Wayne's chavvy sister. Wayne's cousin Claire Rooney was in court yesterday, and she said, "Wayne doesn't have a sister, so I assume that is referring to me." But anyway, Euro 2016, Rebecca Vardy is to blame for the Iceland debacle. This was actually reported at the time, which I completely missed.
Oh, well,
this is not overly new, apparently, but it's new to a lot of people. So she was writing a column for The Sun. By the way, Rebecca and Jamie got married on May 25th that year. This is a proper newlywed couple going into Euro 2016.
Was she writing or was this the Secret Wag column?
It has been reported that she was writing a column in The Sun, and it was reported in 2016 in The Guardian that she was writing a column for a national paper.
Okay.
So the Secret Wag thing, I'm not sure, is that out there?
She denies that she's the Secret Wag, yeah.
But it was reported in 2016.
She might also have been writing a separate column. So
quite possibly. But definitely it's on the record that she was writing a column for The Sun yesterday, and in a national paper is what The Guardian in 2016 referred to it as. So Wayne Rooney was saying yesterday that Roy Hodgson asked him to have a word with Jamie Vardy on issues regarding his wife. Gary Neville apparently was quite concerned with this at the time as well, because of the column and because of the real sort of prevalence of her in the media. Rooney said that England's players attempted to relax in between matches by playing pool and other games, and during this time Jamie Vardy would regularly be in the same room talking to his wife, and Rooney said Mrs Vardy was almost there with the team. She was on FaceTime a lot. He said that he knew it was an awkward subject, so I needed to speak to Mr Vardy and speak to his wife and ask him to calm his wife down. I remember the conversation I had with Jamie. He said it was a bit awkward for me to have to speak with a teammate regarding his wife. I sat down with Jamie Vardy and he had a coffee. It was such an awkward moment. And Vardy's barrister questioned Rooney on this. Ask his wife to calm down. She wasn't dancing on tables. And Rooney replied, no, she wasn't, as far as I'm aware. And Rebecca Vardy then told the court that her husband Jamie insists he never had a chat with Wayne Rooney about her media activities causing trouble for the England squad. Rooney hit back saying he 100% had a chat. If he wants to relay it back to his wife, that's entirely his business. And then Jamie Vardy outside court yesterday said that Rooney was talking nonsense. So this whole thing is disputed both in court and outside court.
So presumably they're going to stick Jamie Vardy on the stand.
You would like to think so if he said something like that. Now tomorrow's the final day of this. We've got a day off today, unfortunately. Like all the reporters covering this are like, why are people reading my stuff? Like, I mean, they're almost shamefully, reporting it and while getting loads of Twitter followers in the period of it. So they've got a day off. From the court reporting yesterday, there's a line in The Guardian saying, the Vardys sat on the front bench a metre away from the Rooneys. The two women occasionally glanced sideways at each other while their two husbands largely avoided eye contact. And a sketch artist pretty much nailed this side eye, as we can see here. From
Is that
Rebecca
Vardy?
Yeah.
No, that must be our barrister, is it? That doesn't look anything like him.
I see. I don't think actually that's a bad job of Jamie Vardy.
Okay, right. What colour is his hair at the moment?
I actually don't know.
Is his hair not much fairer than that? Is there not a bit of fair in his hair? Maybe just the dye in the past has like lodged itself in my brain.
She didn't have that colour crayon available yesterday. And speaking of which, this has been obviously a great exhibition of entertainment. It's been a really intriguing story over the last little while, but this has also been a great exhibition of art over the last week or so. Well, and I've picked out my top 5 art moments from the trial so far, the top 5 sketches of Wayne Rooney.
It's of the same quality as the various statues that are being created around the world of other human beings that look nothing like the human beings. And then remember that Italian woman touched up the artwork and ruined it? Remember that story? That's the bang of her. She's been drafted in to be the exclusive sketch artist for her.
I think that's complete slander on this artist. I would disagree wholeheartedly. These are my top 5 favourite depictions of Wayne Rooney over the last couple of weeks. And at number 5 is the definition of neoclassicism. I think we can all agree. Just a beautiful shot of Wayne Rooney there.
He's 60.
At number 4 we have this, which is modern Baroque at its best. The great artists of the 17th and 18th centuries would be spinning in their grave with glee, looking at this and a sense of pride. Number 3 is this one. They say conceptual art is dead, but it's made a comeback during this trial. Just look at that charcoal work, absolutely exceptional. Number 2 then is expressionism at its finest. Looks like Brian McClare when he was sitting in the studio here. The art houses of the early 20th century in Austria and Germany, that movement has made its way to the courthouse.
I like that.
In London, and they've inspired this artist's work. And then in at number 1, we have this surrealist piece. Just look at that pencil work.
It's Mike Tyson.
Accentuates the sheer size and baldness of the head of the subject.
Very Irish looking. The second last one was kind of like Eastern. That's what that kind of.
That's kind of what I was saying. Definitely got a vibe of standing in a museum while somewhere in Austria off it.
Yeah. If you want to get in touch this morning, 087 180 180 is the WhatsApp number. That's today's update on the Agatha Christie trial. Yeah, we'll be back to that one. It'll actually be Monday. Really, we might not get the chance to do it again because the next day will be Friday.
No, the next day will be tomorrow, which is Thursday. Today is Wednesday.
Oh my God, what a week. You can follow Off the Ball across all our social platforms. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and download the OTB Sports app. There's only, like, when you have one of those spiritual breakthroughs in your life, there's only so much more that you can take in a week. You know, you kind of need to just lie down and sit down afterwards and let it kind of.
Imagine how the Liverpool fans feel on their journey.
Well, I'd say they're absolutely dead. OTB AM is brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. We should very briefly talk about the stuff that happened last night, which was the Sheffield United captain, Billy Sharp. I don't know if you've seen this yet, but in the aftermath of the penalty shootout, Sheffield United get beaten. There's a pitch invasion by the Nottingham Forest fans. They're going to Wembley for the championship final. And he gets blindsided and headbutted by one of the Nottingham Forest fans who runs onto the pitch and then runs away. You can kind of just see it, and there's a bit of video there we can keep showing. You can just keep showing because it's very hard to make out the first time you see it. This video has been taken down in the UK, by the way, because he's been charged this morning. We're okay to show it here, but it's on the very bottom of the screen. If you kind of follow the yellow coming in from the right hand side, and then he just explodes into Billy Sharp, who's had stitches in the immediate aftermath of the game, and so it did significant damage to him. And I think pitch invasions generally, we up to this point would have thought pitch invasions are great. We love them. They're like this mass outpouring of joy, but that was just a mass outpouring of scumbaggery.
Yeah, Billy Sharp played for Forest at one point, so you could suggest maybe it was a bit of a targeted attack on him. I know the police have arrested somebody this morning. Be interesting to see what sort of knock-on impact it has on Forest. Like, is it going to be an immediate setback for them before their final? I suspect not, unless they're denied the opportunity to bring fans to Wembley.
I mean, they won't do that because they'll say it'll ruin the game. But there should be something that is massively punitive and not financial. They should punish the fans for this behaviour, and no away fans at games for Forest in whatever division they're in next season for the first 10 games. Something to go, you guys need to police this, right? You want us to treat you with respect,
Billy Sharp got assaulted on the pitch yesterday. It's whoever it is that's done it, and whatever fan group they are, will surely be punished in this regard. And the fact that it's caught on camera as well is not going to help their case whatsoever. It's pretty embarrassing, to be honest.
The Football Pod are going on the road, the Royal Theatre Castle Bar, on Thursday, June the 2nd. Tickets are on sale now. Go to otbsports.com/events to get yours today, and stay tuned to OTB for details on more shows to come. To be with a chance to win, tell us, who's this? Donegal legend with strong Celtic links.
Iran played last night, they're playing Portugal, and a lot of the stuff that's going on, that this is in or out. It's cut or thrust.
Who is that? If you want to win a pair of tickets to the show, comment wherever you're watching or tweet your answer to @OffTheBallAM. It is 7:52. John O'Leary asks, Is Gers feeling alive watching a team losing a final, just him preparing for Kildare's hammering in a Leinster final?
Yeah, good question, actually.
Well, if the massive population base of Dublin are back to handing out ceremonial whoopings to everybody again, that's not good for the game. We've long been an advocate of splitting Dublin on this show, all the way back. I'm fairly sure on the first or second day that Off the Ball went live in 2002, when we were just a Dublin show, one of the first items was, should Dublin be split? Almost certain we talked to GAA President Sean Kelly about that. I was like, well, yeah, it's definitely worth considering. So we've been talking about this a long time.
The massive population base of Dublin, who, of course, you're a place with, 1.5 million people. You've made the point in the show that it would be embarrassing if Kerry didn't win the All-Ireland this year with their puny population base of, 150,000 people. So if Kerry played Kildare in the morning, Kerry could rightfully say that Kildare have a massive population base, well over 200,000 people in your county.
198, I think, but go on, yeah.
I don't know. I think Naas is rapidly expanding as we speak right now. I think a new 10,000 people have popped into Naas this morning. So I wouldn't be complaining about population bases if I were you. Dublin is still bigger than Kildare, I will say.
I mean, come on, the game is
that
rigged.
Is a fact.
Everybody knows the dice is loaded. Right, it is 7:54, time for the Power Rankings.
Some of these critics, these pundits,
I absolutely adore them lads. I have unbelievable time for them, but they're a great bunch, but it's not acceptable.
They like to play the hard man when they're on it. It's not very pleasant when you're trying to manage a team. All you're looking for is a bit of civility and a bit of decency, but they just miss you like you have nothing to do with the bloody occasion.
Okay, Eoin.
We haven't done these in a while, actually, the Power Rankings. I guess you don't really need to update something that's so perfect and flawless with great regularity, but let's do it anyway.
After the league, what page were Derry on? Page 3?
No, page 2.
You sure?
Yeah, definitely. They were definitely a top 10, top 11 team in the country.
Did you not punish them for their... They obviously were periodising. Good start to the league. Don't give a shit about getting promotion. Another pre-season happened, all in preparation for what's happening now.
Did I punish them for that?
You did. You definitely... They got, booted down.
Yeah, they got booted down below Galway and Roscommon because I thought at that time Galway and Roscommon were better than Derry. But as it turns out, Derry are now better than Galway and Roscommon.
How the turntables have turned.
Yeah, that tends to happen with sport. Things change.
Come on, let's get into it.
Number 32 is Waterford.
Are these all dead now? Is this who's going to win the Tailteann Cup, or how is this? What do these now mean?
It means who is the best county in Ireland, and I'm ranking them. Some of these counties play the Tailteann Cup.
It's now broken into two separate tournaments, like the SPL.
Yeah, it is, but I can put them all
never
together.
understand how the SPL works at this stage of the season. It's like, what? How did that? Didn't they play each other 3 times?
It's also been the Scottish Premiership for like 10 years at this point.
Home and away and something else.
I am inclusive and all about integration on the Power Rankings, and we're bringing the Tailteann Cup and the Sam Maguire together. No elitism here. Waterford staying put. They're playing this weekend against Wicklow in the Tailteann Cup in the preliminary round. Carlow staying put at number 31. I don't think we've been on since they lost by 15 points to Louth. London staying put at number 30. Laois still at 29, and then our first movers are Leitrim and Sligo swapping places. Leitrim down to 28. Leitrim down to 28. Sligo up to 27. I just think that the magnitudes of the defeats kind of allowed that leapfrogging to happen. Longford in at number 26 and then Antrim in at number 25. Offaly are 24. They've got an opportunity for revenge against Wexford this weekend. John Mahan said that we've only got one guy who opted out of the squad, and it wasn't because of the Tailteann Cup. He felt he wasn't getting sufficient game time, and then he proceeded to name the player in the media. Joey O'Connor was the guy I was referring to there. The others were fantastic. What a way to throw one player under the bus.
He's like, what?
So they lost by 3 points to Wexford in the championship in the Sam Maguire race. So as I say, we'll be doing our quick picks on Friday. I know Offaly are behind Wexford in the power rankings, but I might just be tipping Wexford to get beaten this time, especially given the magnitude of the defeat to Dublin. I know it's Dublin, but at 23 points and only scoring 4 points yourself wasn't amazing. And it does feel that this weekend is possibly even more important than the previous match between the two, because they were both playing in a Leinster Championship game, which, as we now know, Dublin are going to win maybe not at a canter, but they will win.
Is it fair to say there's been any discourse around the Tailteann Cup, like any hint of people being mildly displeased with how it's built up? Is it?
What do you mean?
Like, would that be if you were reporting on the advent of the draw the other day, and it was your job to tell everybody on the news what was happening? Would it just be like, this is a great thing, and that's it, full stop?
Well, obviously not, because the whole thing has been clouded in criticism.
Would you mention that?
I personally would. I actually genuinely don't know what you're getting at here.
Well, Marty Morrissey did his report from Croke Park, and there was no hint of Tomás O'Shea saying, we don't know what the hell this is, like, what's going on? Why are they doing this? Why did they split it? We don't know if we're north or south. 3 days before. No hint of that. It was just a Tailteann Cup's great. There's really interesting fixtures like Offaly versus Wexford. Straight face. What? We just had that fixture.
Yeah.
Anyway, look, sorry, I didn't mean to, but...
Well, no, it's interesting. I was kind of like looking at the fixtures and the television schedule as well this weekend, and I think maybe Sunday's Tailteann Cup game will be on GAA Go, and Saturday's maybe not. Or, I don't know, we'll see how the week kind of pans out. You can't find the Tailteann Cup game, as far as I'm aware, on GAA Go as I speak. So I'm looking at the live and upcoming games here, and the hurling games are available. The Tailteann Cup games aren't. So that I would have thought is like the base level, just to at least have the games available, that you can buy them even if you want to. But it'll just be interesting to see what the actual live free to air, or even on non-free to air coverage will be over the next little while. I presume the final will be televised live, the semi-finals will be televised live.
They said that, yeah.
So that's kind of what we're expecting. But for me, I do think Wexford Offaly this weekend is possibly more important than the Leinster Championship game, because they're both moving towards something that they can possibly win, and maybe Offaly have a higher ceiling, despite the fact that they're behind Wexford in the rankings. Wicklow are in at 22. Again, another team that begin their Tailteann Cup campaign this weekend. They're up against Waterford. They should beat them. They could go on a run, and then they play the winners of Wexford or Offaly in the following round. So this category, as we'll kind of discover in a moment, is this geographical place. The south is much more forgiving than the north. As I say, we'll get to that in just a moment. 21 for Fermanagh staying put. And 20 is what I wanted to get to here, is Down, a non-mover. Like, Down maybe wouldn't go on a run in the Tailteann Cup anyway, like there's been a lot said about them. There seems to be a bit of discord in the camp. Like since the Monaghan loss, they've lost Caelan Mooney, Ryan McAvoy, Jerry Collins, Corey Quinn, Charlie Smith. They've obviously had people slinging mud from the sidelines quite significantly over the last little while. And then to make things worse, they drew Cavan in the first round of the Tailteann Cup. Like, but the dice was loaded against them, obviously.
I mean, it was.
Like,
yeah.
it would have been twice as hard for them to draw Cavan if it wasn't.
Had Wexford, like.
Exactly. So, I have
down versus Wexford in Wexford Park.
Yeah.
We're interested in that.
If you look at the power rankings, and of course they are gospel, and do a mini Tailteann Cup rankings, Down are the number 4 Tailteann Cup team in it. And in a competition with 16 teams, they've be
drawn
dumped
the
out.
number 1 seed.
Yeah.
Like, come on.
So that's unfortunate for Down. Again, as I say, with the amount of players that they're missing, chances are they would lose anyway. And
it'll be fixed next year.
Momentum is definitely against them. That's a beautiful word. Tipperary are down a place to 19th. They were beaten by Limerick in the Munster Championship, but they're into the Tailteann Cup. Westmeath, I would make second favourites for the Tailteann Cup. They're up to 18th. Definitely get the sense from their camp that they're up for this. They really felt that they had an opportunity to beat Kildare at the weekend. I'm not sure is that necessarily the case watching it. I'm not sure how you felt, if you felt nervous at all looking at the scores coming in from Croke Park. It didn't really feel as if Kildare were ever going to lose grip in that match, but still 3 points was all that separated them at the end. Louth down a couple of places to 17th. Meath, a big faller this week, obviously they're down to 16th after getting hockeyed by Dublin at the weekend, and Cork are up a place to 15th. I just feel that their show and then their provincial semi-final against a very, very good team was better than Meath's showing against a very, very good team as well.
50-minute champions.
I mean, it's more than what Meath could tell you about their performance. So Cork have leapfrogged Meath. Clare stay put at number 14. They obviously had their championship ended by a penalty shootout defeat to Limerick. Their Munster Championship campaign ended, I should say. They're obviously in the qualifiers, and Limerick are in a Munster final once again. I think just a brilliant league followed up by a brilliant Munster campaign so far. Penalty shootout win against Clare, 6-point win against Tip. The problem for them in the Munster final is that game is in Killarney, so it's just a really tough place to go.
Why is it in Killarney? What's the
a home away arrangement?
Right.
I think it's like 11,
20 years.
Yeah, 2010 I think. Cavan up a place to 12th. I would make them heavy favourites for the Tailteann Cup, assuming everybody's hanging around, and I presume everybody will hang around to try and get another trophy. And Kildare down a place to 11. All these teams are now going to drop a place because Derry are the ones that have shot in from the outside of the top 12.
Where were Derry?
They must have been 12th. If Kildare and Roscommon are down, Derry were actually 11th.
I'm calling bullshit.
Derry were 11th.
No, I'm calling bullshit on Kildare at 11.
Go on.
They should be ahead of Armagh.
You think?
Absolutely at this stage, yeah.
Okay.
I think they played 2 games and they played well.
Yeah.
They absolutely annihilated Louth.
Yeah. They didn't annihilate Westmeath.
You continue to disrespect us. That's fine.
It's interesting because
we'll love this. That's fine.
What?
No. Shove it up your hole, Eoin.
What's the? I'm not even going to ask what's the expectation. What's the fear level for Dublin, for Kildare Dublin Leinster final after?
Well, I mean, it was grand until Dublin turned out to be Dublin again.
Yeah.
It was like, oh, this could be good. We could have a chance.
At 4 o'clock on Sunday, it was okay.
I feel a bit like Tommy Rooney a couple of years ago when he talked us all into, look at this great young team and the style of play they have, and they match up perfectly. And then it was like 14-1 at 10 minutes gone.
He was talking about Meath though, was he?
Yeah, a couple of years ago, yeah. I had done the same thing over the course of the league. Kildare put it up to Dublin in Newbridge in the league. Obviously, Dublin in the league were not the same team.
Yeah.
They had obviously given loads of players time off.
Armagh beat that Kildare team in the league.
Yeah, but
so
Armagh subsequently have proven to have the McGeaney-itis first round of the championship disease, and maybe they'll come roaring back.
I mean, if they were playing Louth and Westmeath, I don't think McGeaney-itis would be a problem. It's a slight issue.
Fair enough. But we should be ahead of them on the basis of you can only beat what's put in front of you.
That is not a basis ever for the power rankings, as you know. I will reveal the formula someday. There is like a magic formula here, which obviously makes these things pretty bulletproof.
You ring up Hugh in the board's head and you ask, "Here, is this any good?" And he goes, "No," and you go, "Okay, thanks. That's it. That's the formula."
I mean, we'll get our chalkboard working, or get in a chalkboard, and I'll go through it. I'll go through the exact algorithm. Roscommon are down a place to
spread of 6 points for the Kildare game.
I know this is like I'm serving up and cooking up humble pie here when this doesn't happen, but I'd be backing Dublin to cover that. I think it'll be a shootout.
Well, look, Kildare's defence has not been particularly locked down in the game so far. So
Exactly. Unless they've got
concerned.
Maybe they really pulled up against Westmeath the other day and know that there's a bigger test coming. And Glenn Ryan actually was speaking to him afterwards, kind of made a point that, you know, we're going to really try and really go after this game this year. Because
that's all you want. We're alive.
Last year didn't really.
We might die at the end of this, but we were alive until we were dead.
Yeah.
As opposed to like, oh sure, we're dead already.
And I guess there's definitely a bit of life attached to Kildare this year, and it's not slandering Kildare at all. It's just the sort of, I don't know, Dublin just looked pretty ruthless in that first half of the weekend, and that belief that they might cover that 6 point spread is based on the fact of what Dublin will do as opposed to what Kildare won't do. But there are still probably a few openings in that defence. Armagh are down to 9th. Obviously, they've been dumped out of the Ulster Championship again this year. Donegal beat them this time. Tyrone are the big fallers. We haven't done a power ranking since they were defeated by Derry by 11 points. Which is definitely the result of the championship still. They are down to 8th place. Monaghan down to 7th. Galway move up ahead of Monaghan. They weren't before the Derry match, and I just think after what we've seen, I think
Monaghan not getting punished enough here. Monaghan and Tyrone not getting punished enough. Monaghan, Tyrone and Armagh not getting punished enough. Like, come on, Kildare on the front page. Kildare 7. That's it. Fix it for you.
Galway
should be ahead of Roscommon too.
What?
We beat Roscommon tomorrow.
You think so?
Yeah, we would.
I'm not sure. Like, see, the thing is,
we'll see.
We will see.
We'll see in the
When it
qualifiers.
comes to these Connacht and Munster teams, other than Galway, who've played Mayo, it's very, very hard to get a proper read on where they are. Whereas, and the same goes for Kildare. Let's face it. Like, I mean, the 15-point win against Louth.
The meaningless provincial championships are sucking the draining the battery.
Even the power rankings seem
Pascal would
devoid of
say.
energy.
Go on.
Mayo staying put at number 5. Derry, the big risers, up to 4th. Derry on the Mount Rushmore.
Just go back to Mayo 5, Galway 6.
Yeah, we did this on the last power ranking. Just a reminder. I know it's been a few weeks, but we had this exact chat.
Just go back to that for me again, will you? Just go back to that bit where what?
Remember, I made this point a few weeks ago that yes,
You're sticking with your erroneous piffle.
I do love erroneous piffle, but I think that in this case it's not erroneous and it's not piffle. I think that Mayo were not necessarily the better team in that game against Galway. I think Galway did deserve to win, but I think that the nature of the comeback would send alarm bells ringing in terms of people who are writing off Mayo. Their inaccuracy up front, I think, is something that they can address.
Where
I
was
think
the
that
game?
they have a much higher ceiling.
Home field
Bit
advantage.
of a higher ceiling.
Like, and they still lost.
I know, but McHale Park and Galway in the last couple of years, what was it, 2018 was it? Galway beat them down there, and maybe another time as well. I was at the game covering it with James Horan when he wasn't Mayo manager that year, or whatever that year was. That there was a long delay for an injury that day. My years have just deserted me.
Doesn't matter.
But
You're wrong, but it's okay. John Claffey says Westmeath lose and still move up a place. Such a fanboy. Oh, and this is obviously some kind of sock to Adrian Barry. I don't really understand it either.
Well, hold on a minute. Let me just scroll all the way back and explain this, because where is it? Westmeath again? 18th. Westmeath
18th. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, I mean, are we not giving them a little bit of credit for coming relatively close to a team that Ger believes are better than
Even the form line, Westmeath
Armagh.
and Louth. Westmeath are behind Louth, and like if you're
Westmeath lost to Kildare by 3 points. Tipperary lost to Limerick by 6 points. Kildare are a better team than Limerick, therefore Westmeath have to go ahead of Tipperary.
Get to the first page. That's erroneous pitfall. The first page again. Sorry. Kerry number 1, Dublin number 2, Donegal 3, Derry 4.
Yes, that's your top 4.
Looks about right. I mean, we'll see. Derry, Donegal. Derry have been more impressive to this point, and Dublin have gone from where to 2?
Just from 3 to 2.
Right. So you never had them lower than 3.
Never had them lower than
In
3. It was
campaign.
Tyrone who were number 2, and then the Derry destruction.
And it's not Kerry 1, Dublin 1A. It's Kerry still in a tier on their own. Absolute favourites.
No, I would probably have Kerry and Dublin in a... No, Kerry in a tier on their own, Dublin in a tier on their own, and then the third tier is how I would look at it. I don't think they're exactly at the same level, but I do think they are. They've moved away. Not moved away, but there's a bit of a gap between them and the rest right now. But do you not look at Derry and do you not look at Rory Gallagher and just see a bolter that'll carry them all the way through to the middle of July here? Am I getting completely swept away in what's happening here with Derry?
The celebration after the goal is like... There needs to be a bigger meme culture and a bigger GIF culture in GAA coverage, because like, I sent you the video of Michael Stipe playing Slane in 1995, and I remember the reviews talking about him twitching like an electrocuted mannequin. I was like, whoa. It was like Elvis or something. An angry Elvis smashing the water bottle. It's like, I mean,
Did he spit on his hands, Michael Stipe?
is that what?
Yeah, and he licks the fingers, spits in the hands.
I mean, you know, sometimes you can't grip the steering wheel unless you do that.
Yeah, it's true.
Rory's at the wheel.
It definitely felt like a bit of an exorcism when we saw him in those two moments where the camera pans to him. We need to get Rory Gallagher calm for sure. And it just, like, again, I think I made this point on Monday, but it does feel a little bit like peak Donegal.
And redemption for Rory, and the credit is going just to Rory this time. There's no Jim. There's nothing there. It's like it's his creation, and the players are backing that up, and they're saying in the aftermath, like, very articulate, experienced individuals are giving him some kind of kudos for what's happening, and you've got to listen to that, you know.
And I think in the build-up as well to the game on Sunday, there was plenty of kudos given to Rory Gallagher. This isn't just a reaction to the Monaghan win. I think the Derry or the
I think we tipped him at 50-1 on this show. Pretty sure it was like,
I didn't do that, but
that's a good bet.
Yeah, but possibly, but I didn't. I'll accept that Derry were
Clamber aboard
underrated.
the bandwagon.
Yeah, sorry, of course, 50-1. Just
Right.
rewind.
Cavan could be 9th or 10th now, says Cavan lad 100. How did Dublin get relegated and go to 2 by beating 2 of the worst teams in the country? Because they've won 6 of the last 7 All-Irelands. 9 out of the last 11, is that it? 8 of the last 10?
9 of the last 11.
You just made that up. Due to the big gap between the provincial finals and the quarterfinals, there's a potential that some teams, for example Tyrone, Monaghan, Mayo, are trying to time their runs to prevent a gap of games, says Ronan Harkin. Not on purpose, Ronan, I don't think, but I do think that, like, it's very possible that some team is going to go on a run, and one of the non-top 4 teams there, obviously one of them will, because you've got Derry and Donegal, will end up in the semi-finals with, like, massive form and confidence.
And I'd be quite worried for some of those provincial winners, especially Kerry and maybe to an extent Dublin, if they get a bad quarter-final draw, just because of what
Handy quarter-final
draw. Well, a relatively I think that if
like a Tyrone or a Mayo.
Yeah, I think that there's a
I
possibility.
mean, an All-Ireland quarter-final weekend where Kerry were playing Tyrone and Dublin were playing Mayo, that'd be good.
Yeah, the qualifiers draw is next Monday. There's, like, clearly 2 different categories to them as well, so it would take quite a fluke for us to not have a heavy hitter in round 1.
12 minutes past 8 this morning here on OTB AM. Tommy Walsh is up next talking about the Hurling Championship. But first, here's Michael Dignan on last night's show with the lads talking about restoring Offaly to where they should be. See you after these.
Was the pride in the Offaly jersey gone?
Well, I would have felt, we weren't in a great place, and I said that last night after the match. Particularly in hurling, we were relegated to Christie Ring. That was hard for us to believe, lads that had won an All-Ireland 20 years before that. And, the football probably wasn't in as bad a place, but hurling, was. And we were a very, very small county, maybe 75 to 80,000 people. You divided, into hurling and football, and then our playing population was getting smaller and smaller, and our club scene wasn't going great. Our schools, our games program was, to me, very limited. We didn't have the coaches on the ground, so there was a lot of things that needed to be fixed, and I would have felt we had to get involved. So the pride in the jersey, maybe the young people didn't understand. Maybe they were just accepting that we were where we were, and we couldn't go forward from there. And I always said from day one, I might be mad, but I wouldn't be doing the job unless I thought we could win All-Irelands again. Because if you don't have that ambition and belief, and certainly if I don't have it as a chairperson, it's very hard to ask anyone else to have it.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
This is Sport Ireland Campus, and here is where it all starts. From the little ones learning to the high-performance athletes leading. Here we go to play, to practice, to progress. Here is where communities in the nation come together to compete, to win, and to belong. Here we go to the next level, then on to the world stage. This is Sport Ireland Campus, and here we go. Visit sportirelandcampus.ie to be a part of it.
Newspapers have called it the greatest club game ever.
Munster legends Alan Quillan and Niamh Briggs are joining forces to bring you all the latest analysis, news, interviews and so much more.
The strength of Munster rugby has always been the big boys up front.
There's a lot of pressure on these guys continuously.
I'm actually really, really excited for it.
The Red 78 with Alan Quinlan and Niamh Briggs. Available every Wednesday. Don't miss a moment of action. Subscribe to the Rugby channel on the OTB Sports app and turn on your notifications now.
FBD Insurance knows this sound spells trouble for van drivers. But if you're an existing FBD customer, you'll get 15% off a new van insurance policy. It's how we're keeping you and your van on the road. Visit fbd.ie or contact your local branch. FBD Insurance. Support. It's what we do. Terms and conditions apply. 15% discount available on new commercial motor policies only when an existing FBD farm, business, car or home policy is in place. FBD Insurance Group Limited, trading as FBD Insurance, is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland. Commercial motor insurance is underwritten by FBD Insurance plc.
OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
It was an absolutely seismic weekend in the Hurling Championship, and I'm delighted to say Tommy Walsh is with us to look back and cast an eye forward as well. Tommy, good morning to you. How are you?
Yeah, good morning, Gerard. All good.
Let's start with Waterford, and I just want to make sure that we do give some time to Westmeath before we wrap this up as well, because that was probably one of the results of a generation. But let's start with Waterford, right? What's going on?
I don't really think there's much going on, to be honest, Gerard, because if you go back, like all the build-up for the championship for Waterford was kind of based on the league semi-final and final, where they scored 5 goals against Wexford and 4 goals against Cork. But if you go back to the earlier rounds of the league, like they drew with Dublin, Antrim nearly beat them, and Kilkenny beat them convincingly in Nolan Park. So, like, I don't think Atton has gone too wrong for Waterford at all. I think their fixtures probably they weren't really suitable to them, like playing Limerick in their second game. You know, Limerick are beating everybody in the country nearly at this stage. And then coming up against Cork the last day, Cork, the whole country kind of criticising them. They're criticising, I suppose, their will to fight to win the ball, their will to defend, their will to tackle. I mean, I suppose, pummel a team like that, there's only one way really. They usually come out, and that's fighting. And that's what Waterford met on last weekend. It was a Cork team that we all know they have bucket loads of underage medals. They've a good few of them have Munster Championship medals. So these guys, they are good hurlers. It was just, I suppose, to add the other facets to their game, and they did that the weekend. So I don't think a whole lot has gone wrong with Waterford. Like if you look at, they lost one of their best cornerbacks, young Daly, in the first round. Like he was probably their main man marker, very, very fast, and probably his inspiration for a team and a cornerback is putting in last-ditch tackles. Young Daly was like that for that Waterford team. He's gone. And then, you know, up the field, I suppose, in the Tipperary match, they had 2 super subs coming on, Austin Gleeson and Jamie Barron. They're starting at the moment. And I just think, outside of Limerick, Jared, every other team, I think nearly that's left in championships, nearly a 50-50 game. Like even if you look at the Leinster games the weekend, or the Munster Championship games coming forward this weekend, both of them, you couldn't really call them. So I don't think the whole lot has gone wrong with Waterford. They're just unlucky the weekend. They had been scoring a lot of goals. Against Cork, they conceded 2 goals and only scored 1. So that was probably one of the main reasons that they lost last weekend.
So we maybe overrated Waterford a bit ahead of the championship. Is that is that what the rest of us are understanding now?
Go look at the All-Star selection most years. Most of them are picked on the All-Ireland final and All-Ireland semi-final. So us as GAA people, as GAA followers, we kind of look back nearly on the last match or probably the second last match really, when we're predicting the future or when we're probably sending out all our plaudits. So I think when people are basing their opinion on Waterford, you know, going on and being probably contenders or even above Limerick in the standings, was based on probably the league semi-final and league final, where they were absolutely wonderful. Scored 5 goals against a Wexford team that I think Wexford were unbeaten in the league at that stage, and a Cork team that was really on the up, and they're after beating Kilkenny convincingly probably in the last 10 minutes down in Páirc Uí Chaoimh in the other league semi-final. So like there were people who were well within their rights to build them up. It was just probably they're basing their opinion on the 2 most recent matches as opposed to probably over a whole season. So, but I think this Waterford team is still very good, Ger. But I just think that all, say, bar Limerick, I think everyone else is nearly a 50-50 game, to be honest.
Do we run the risk then of if this Waterford team is very good but still don't make it out of their group, it's because the group is super competitive. It's like one of the most competitive championships in sport. Do we need to draw conclusions about them, or are you saying actually, look, that's the vagaries of sport, they will come good eventually.
Yeah, I think it's nearly like Champions League at this stage. Like if you don't make the semi-finals or finals, does it make you a bad team? You could have just run into maybe a bad fixture in the quarter-final or in the earlier rounds. I think that's the way it is in these, like, you look at Waterford's fixtures, right? All the pressure, as you said, everyone was building them up after the league final, that they were nearly probably first in the standings above Limerick. Now, rewind back a couple of weeks, Limerick weren't after winning probably any league games at this stage. So and then coming into the first round of the championship in Welsh Park, their home game, where they had not won a single Munster round-robin game in the previous 2 years when it was based there. And all the pressure was building on them that they were the number one team in the country. But they have no All-Ireland medals. They don't have Munster medals either. So that's huge pressure for a young team, I think. And I thought they dealt with it brilliantly against Tipperary. They didn't come out of the blocks because they were playing the short game. Tipperary were ravenous. People are after, putting them down to probably nearly the fifth team in Munster at this stage. And they came out fighting after a bad start, Watford. They finished very, very strongly. And unfortunately for them then, they met a team that was after having a 6-week break. They were on a high, Limerick, in the second round. And they put it up to them for long periods of that game and came back fighting the 2 late goals. So I think there's plenty of character in that Waterford team, plenty of skill. They've won plenty of things underage. They're league champions. So I think it'll be very unfortunate to go out with this Munster Championship, Jerry, if they do this weekend, because it's out of their hands now. If Cork beat Tipperary, they're basically out on the head-to-head because of the draw last weekend between Clare and Limerick. So I think I wouldn't be drawing any conclusions on this Waterford team, but they would want to be coming out fighting in this last game just to, to keep their profile up and to keep the confidence up. And, at least if they win, well, then they've done everything they can in the last game when the pressure was on. So I wouldn't be drawing much conclusions, no.
So if we're saying that Waterford haven't become a bad team overnight, I guess the same could possibly be said about Cork becoming a great team overnight, and by extension, is there a risk that they actually don't get the job done in Thurles this weekend?
Yeah, well, everybody knows what Cork can do when they have the ball. It's what they do when they don't have the ball. And people, pundits, I think Cork's own people, hurling people in general, watching the Sunday game or watching the game live when they're at the games at the weekend, they all came to the same conclusion, that Cork were not defending well. So whether that was tracking back, wing backs, midfielders tracking back, or whether that was, I've seen in a lot of cases, they would go into the tackle but wouldn't make the tackle. So they were kind of just there, in and around. Whereas that all changed the weekend on. When like you say, Shane Kingston came on to sub, he tracked back a lad right as far as the edge of his own square where his full back would normally be, saved a certain goal. And that's the difference in winning and losing. I know they won by 6 points in the end, but if they had conceded a goal at that stage, who knows what would have happened. A game can take on a life of its own. We've seen Conor Lahan taking out a sharp puck out. We've seen Seamus Harnedy just winning these, really, really tough balls. They won a lot of high balls as well, Owen. The game has changed. We can all acknowledge that. You have to be able to play the kind through the lines and play it long. But the simple basics of the game still have not changed, and that you still have to be able to win your own ball. You would look at Limerick. People rave on about Paul Kinnerk, John Kiley, best kind of systems, best game management in the country. They're still probably the top team at winning their own ball. And you go back to Cork the weekend, Darragh Fitzgibbon was winning it, Harnedy was winning it. So listen, they went back to basics, I think, Cork the weekend with the, bedding in, the new, I suppose, the hybrid game. They're ready to play both. So I think for Cork, going forward this weekend, they're playing Tipperary. Tipperary are going to have a beat in their bonnet. They're not going to want to go through a Munster Championship without a win. And they even have the slight chance themselves of going through if scoring averages work their way and results go their way. So a massive game for Cork this weekend, Owen. But can they do it 2 games in a row? That would be the question, I'd say, Kieran Kingston. And it was great even Kieran Kingston getting the yellow card. I know, listen, you'd say you can draw your own conclusions, but it's still a sign to the team, a sign to the public. These boys mean business. They're going to die in their sword here today. And I thought, as a complete performance from management right through the players, I thought Cork showed up last weekend.
How much of an impact can that have on the team when the manager is showing that amount of physical energy? Like we're seeing it quite a lot with the Derry footballers at the moment, and Rory Gallagher kind of being way more animated than his opposite number on the sideline pretty much every week. Is that something that the players take much notice of?
Well, I think there's the standards to be set, and there's there's body language that you can display that will, that this man means business. This man is serious, and that could be the manager, it could be the kit man, it could be the corner forward, it could be the last sub. What I would say about it is that was natural the weekend on. So Kieran Kingston, I could bet me, bottom dollar that he did that naturally. There was no game plan of his. I have to show the lads that I mean business the weekend. That was just him showing he's a very passionate Cork man, as all them Cork hurling people are. And he was just showing that naturally. I think when it changes is, when someone just does it for show, right? I need to show the lads here today and I'm going to jump up and down the line. That's different. It has to be natural. Like you look at Davy Fitz when Davy was over Clare and he was over Wexford. It's natural. Like it's not for show. That's the way they are in normal life. So I think once you're doing it for the right reasons, I think it definitely has a positive impact on their team, yeah. And it's not just the manager, it's everybody. And it doesn't have to be jumping up and down on. It can be just when you look into his eyes, he's serious, he's going to die. Like Lehan, I thought the weekend, like this guy was dropped off the panel last year. He could have called back onto the panel this week. He could have sulked. He could have said, no, listen, I'm not going to bother you now. You didn't show me any respect last year. No, he came back. He's after fighting tooth and nail during that league campaign to get back in that team. He's still doing it. I think he scored 3 points the weekend. But it was even the hooks and the blocks that he's shown. That's inspiration to the team when a forward is doing that, especially a forward that you would normally display with scoring points, 4 and 5 points. Now he's putting in the hard yards. He cut out that sharp hook out back over the bar. They're the kind of small things that have huge impacts on a team. I think Lehan as well Harnedy as well, Eoin. Like Harnedy is just like a man possessed, and he always has been. And Mark Landers, you hear him, he was shouting for him to be called back and push maybe centre forward. You put your main men up the middle, and Harnedy is definitely a middleman. I know myself from playing the wing, you can be out of the game for long periods. Then if your team is going well, like you can pop in, scoring 3 and 4 points, and it looks like you're going well. But when the team isn't going well on, and you're in the wing and you're out of the game, it looks like you're, what's this fella doing? He's off his game tonight. So when you're in the centre, you're the fulcrum. You can make it happen in there, and Harnedy is a man that makes it happen. We've seen him out there on Sunday.
What did you think when Horgan was taken off?
Well, what I thought of it was that's a management that wants to win a game. That your loyalty has to be to the team, Ger, not the players. Patrick Horgan, and listen, I should have said congratulations to Patrick Horgan, like top scorer in the All-Ireland Senior Hurling Championship. What a feat for a man. Like he's up there. Like you look at the past guys that were on top of that list. Yeah, Joe Canning, Henry Shefflin, I think was before him. I'm sure Eddie Kerr, Christy Ring, maybe even Nicky Rackard. Like all the giants of the game were on top of this list. And now Horgan, Glen Rovers, probably the second Glen Rovers man out to be, which on top of that list, which is a huge feat for that club down in North Cork. But I thought it was for the management. If you want to win things, your loyalty has to be the team, not a player. Yes, you can have a word with him after the game and say, listen, keep it, knuckle down on training during the week, and we'll pick this team during the week based on, you've done it in the past, and I'm sure you will do it again. But the loyalty, first and foremost, has to be the team. And I thought the Cork management showed that on Sunday. Unfortunately, he was after missing, 1 or 2 frees, and, he wasn't probably having the overall impact. They brought in Tim O'Mahony there as well. Like, they dropped Tim O'Mahony. He's been a mainstay in this Cork team for the last couple of years. And I know Anthony Daly felt that Tim O'Mahony is playing the half-back line. He was more of an offensive player, up in the forwards or even midfields, because you look at the Limerick half-back line, like Hannon stays there most of the time, Diarmaid Burns stays there most of the time. Now, when they have the ball, they shoot forward, but they're not shooting forward for options, really, from looking at it on television. And Tim O'Mahony in the half-back line was gone forward he was gone forward too many times for my liking for a wing back. Whereas up in the forwards, he can do that.
Yeah.
And he had massive impact when he came on.
The conundrum for Clare this week is, what do you do with your team? Do you go all out to keep the form going and get the confidence high, or do you decide that there are massive challenges coming very soon afterwards and not pick a full team? What would you do?
Yeah, but it reminds me back to watching the NFL's game. Tom Collin, when New York Giants. They won the Super Bowl. Say it was 2007. It was probably his first one. And going into the last game of the regular season, they were through. And I don't think by winning the game or the result would have any impact on their on their fixtures ahead. They were in whatever position they were in. And Tom Collin, who was the coach of the Giants, he said at the time, I'm after telling these guys all season, pre-season, during the regular season, that you go out in every training, you go out in every game, and you give it everything. Don't leave anything on the line. Do I suddenly go up to them before their, this will be the one game before their biggest championship game of the season? Do I go up there now and maybe pick a dummy team or tell them, listen, go out, but take it handy here today, we don't want any injuries? He said it's not like a light switch. You can't just change your what you're telling the team or the messages you're sending the team in one game or before the most important game of the season. And he said, no, he picked his best team. They went out. I'm not sure whether they won or not, but they went on anyway and they won the Super Bowl. But that was his thinking after the season. That was what was going through his head. And I would say the same thing for Clare the weekend. Right, only one team can win the All-Ireland. Clare haven't won a Munster Championship since 1998. So they'll go out the one game before they play the Munster final and kind of, run the risk of letting laziness creep into the team. Because if you do it once, Alex Ferguson often said it, if you do it once, you can do it again. So if Clare go out half-hearted out to this game this weekend, well, they can do it again then in the Munster final. You're setting in you're letting a laziness step in. So I would expect Brian Lohan. Now, if you have Nichols or Ger, I would expect them, leave them to have common sense approach, obviously, and you'd have to leave them till the Munster final. But everybody else, if you're fit to play, you're playing, and you're going out to win that game.
He's done some job, Lohan, under all of this, the pressure and the scrutiny that the row with Davy brought, and the national attention, and everybody disappearing last year through COVID. Everybody's back, or nearly everybody's back. And the team is playing really, really well.
It is, and Lohan, I always, you could tell by the way Lohan played the game himself, but I was at the Clare game earlier on in the year, and I saw it was Clare and Tipperary, I think, wasn't it? And basically, the ball went into one of the guys in the forwards. I won't name his name, right? And he kind of half-hearted went for the game. And I seen Lohan. He was ravenous. He was not happy at all. Within 30 seconds, that player was taken off. And to me, they set a standard and your man had been hurling quite well. And was, like, say, a normal manager would say, listen, right, he missed that one, but he's playing well in the game. He'd come on, he'd score another point or two. But no, he was gone. And to me, that sets a standard that them Clare players know whether they're subs or whether they're playing. I have to give it, Holly when I'm on this field. And if I'm not, I can be taken off. It reminds me of Brian Cody. It reminds me of Jim Gavin from Dublin with all them legends that he had in the Dublin team. The rest of the country wondering why they weren't playing. He wasn't playing them. And it just sets standards, and even taking off Patrick Horgan the weekend, like most people might say, well, listen, geez, if we need a score or a free in the last minute, who's going to take it? It's Patrick Horgan. No. There's a standard there, and it's set. So I think that's what Brian Lohan sets in that Clare team and panel, and I think that's what he's getting out of them. Like even the weekend, let's say, some of them didn't hurl as well, but up stepped Tony Kelly then. He shoot the lights out, So I think different players are stepping up on different days, but one thing remains constant: their work rate, their commitment.
We could really do, like, as neutrals, with Clare beating Limerick in the Munster final to just bring a bit of doubt to the eventual outcome to what's going to happen this year.
Yeah, sure. Listen, I suppose everybody likes seeing the underdog. No different than when Limerick won their first one, I suppose. Most people would have been shouting for him to win their first All-Ireland since 1973, and even what went on, I suppose, 94 and 96 with that great Limerick team that many people would have loved to see him All-Ireland medals. So when Limerick won their first one, people were delighted for him, and it'd be no different than this Clare team. They came on in 2013, a lot of these guys, and it looked like they were going to shoot the lights out for many years to come, but we haven't, they haven't been in and around the house much since. So yeah, it would be lovely to see Clare win it. But as a lot of people say, Limerick will probably be only bet once. So when do you want to beat them, Ger?
That is the question, isn't it? And like, even down a man, they're still able to draw a game against a team putting in their best performance. in maybe the last, certainly since 2013.
Respectfully though, would Alex Ferguson not disagree with what you just said there, Tommy? If they can be beaten once, they can be beaten again.
Yeah, no, I think so. Once they're beaten. Oh yes, sorry, absolutely. Like if you go back to 2000 and the year they were beaten, 2019, like everybody raves on about Kilkenny beating them in the All-Ireland semi-final. But they had been better, I think, once or twice previous to that in the Munster Championship as well. So, yeah, I'd agree with Fergie on this one.
Jack wants to know, are Clare too reliant on Tony Kelly?
Yeah, no, I think they proved that in the first two games, Ger, that they haven't. Like Shane O'Donnell was brilliant in the first couple of games. Peter Duggan was brilliant. Ryan Taylor, young Meehan that came on. So, no, like even David Fitzgerald was scoring points from all over the field last weekend. So I think, if anything, the first three rounds have proven that they're not overly reliant on Tony Kelly. I mean, Tony Kelly has a quiet game. Was in the first or second game, he only scored a couple of points from play one or two, but everybody else stepped up. So I would disagree with that, I think. And Tony Kelly, I think, is the kind of player that he doesn't ask, give me the ball every time. It's if the ball comes, I'll shoot. But if not, it's a team game, and somebody else can do it. So I think the difference in Clare this year, I think there's a lot of guys in good form. John Conlon is playing brilliant. Cleary is playing brilliant. I think the whole wing half back line, which is the launch pad for most teams, because they're on the receiving end of short puck outs or long balls. That's young David McInerney, John Conlon and Diarmuid Ryan. I think they've been outstanding in the first three games. So I think at the moment they're playing brilliant all over the field.
A quick word about Westmeath. Like, we constantly talk about how hurling is really stuck with the top tier and it's almost impossible for any team to join them, and it still feels that way. But results at the weekend, like the Westmeath one, will actually give comfort and encouragement to literally every other county down the hurling pyramid to think, with a committed group of players and a committed group of administrators and coaches and an injection of investment, we might be able to at least progress to a point where we can dream of results like that.
Yeah, I agree with you totally there, Ger. And my mind has probably changed on this over the years in regards, the gradings of teams, whether in the Lee McCarthy, Joe McDonough, or Laurie Marr, Christy Ring and so on. Like, I think in this, and Westmeath have proved to the weekend, I think we have to listen to the teams that we're talking about. So that's the Westmeaths, the Laoishes, the Antrims, the Offaly's. So if they're saying they would love to play in the Lee McCarthy Cup, let's let them. I know sometimes you'll have results that don't, do anybody any favours, you would think. But if they're saying that's what they need, we're not doing the work in them counties, trying to build hurling. And some of them they're strong in football as well. We're not the guys on the ground. The guys, let's listen to the guys that are on the ground in Westmeath, on the ground in Laois. The Cheddars, and these guys. If they're saying they want to play in the Liam McCarthy Cup, let's let them, because they're putting in the work. And Laois have had some great results over the years. The Dublin game, I suppose, springs to mind, but they've ran some of the senior teams close as well in recent games. Westmeath, you'd say as well, like they're after a draw with Wexford, and Wexford were unbeaten in the National Hurling League up as far as the semi-final. But go back to Westmeath, I'd say when I was hurling, they were very, very, very strong at club level. You had Clonkill, you had Raharney, they're still strong club teams. So if you have a good base there, you can build on it. Like, like Brendan Murta, Owen Price, I remember playing Railway Cup, Shinty with these guys. They were as good as any hurlers in the country. And over a long period of time, and became friendly with these guys over the year, and hugely passionate, just as anyone from Kenny or Cork or Wexford or Tipperary or anywhere. So what a result, I think, for Westmeath the weekend. They took their chances, they got their goal at the very end. And, fair play to them. But I'd say congratulations, because it's not easy. Now, they have form. They put it up to Kilkenny for long periods. They put it up to Dublin. So this result didn't come out of the blue. Westmeath have been hurling very well. Plus, they beat Kilkenny under 21 a couple of years ago as well, Ger. So, yeah, and listen, great. I think, listen to Michael Duggan there a couple of minutes ago there on your show. What a result for both Offaly and Laois to be in a Leinster minor hurling final. Was it 12 or 13,000 people at the No More Park the other night? These are historic occasions, and I think we should do everything in our power. As I said, my mind has changed over the years on this. I think we should listen to them, and if we should definitely take it on board.
Okay, one last question for you about the Dublin performance against Kilkenny. Unfortunately, it was too like the league performance. We kind of hoped that the league was like most of the league so far, irrelevant, but it turned out not to be, and it's really disappointing that Dublin haven't been able to build on the club success that Coola had and the time and investment and effort and energy that's gone into that team over the last couple of years.
Yeah, you see that, like, I understand Coola, I understand underage the success in Leinster especially, but you see, you have to look at the consequences of them being a major footballing power. So when you're 17 years of age, you have a good minor, career, maybe even some of them under 20, but then they have to make a choice. Do they want to be a hurler or a footballer? And most top stars are probably good at both, and they're choosing football. Like, you take Kilkenny. If Kilkenny, some of their top players had to, if they chose a different sport when they became 18, 19, well, the history of the whole county probably changes. Say if Henry Shefflin chooses, I'm going to play football, or I'm going to play basketball, JJ Delaney, Jackie Turley. Say down in Cork, if Patrick Horgan or, Christy Ring or someone choose a different, like, the history of your probably game in your county changes. And I think that's what happens with this, with the Dublin hurlers, that their top players are equally as good at football. And it might be only one every couple of years. That one could change results. Yeah. And if you go back to the result the weekend against Kilkenny, I was at it, Ger, and like for 50 minutes of that game, or like, it was combat stuff. You wouldn't know who was going to win it. But the difference was Kilkenny's class of scoring goals. That was, I felt myself looking at it. I know they tapped on the points near the end, but when the game was there to be won, it was the goals was the difference. When the ball was around the middle third, it was very, very competitive. Anything could have happened. It was just when, like, TJ Reid's, I was at the game in the stand out around midfield. When TJ Reid scored a goal in the second half, I thought he hadn't passed the ball in. That's how fast. So that's a guy hurling since he was 3-4 years of age in the kitchen at the, when he's supposed to be eating his dinner, he's out hitting the ball off the wall. Like, that's where them, it's a millisecond, but it's a millisecond that TJ Reid probably has seen the opportunity so many times that it's like, a Slumdog Millionaire. What did they do 10 years ago in this situation? This is what I done, bang, goal. Yeah. So, so I think that was the difference, just the extra bit of class scoring the goals. Like Mossy Keown's 2 goals were, I thought they were phenomenal. They looked like 2-point opportunities. But no, last second, bang, hopped it off the ground into the corner. Like, even at the game, we didn't know where the goals until the umpire pulled his flag. That's how quick they were in. You're expecting them to tap the ball over the bar. And I thought, and the opposite of that then, for Dublin, they were hoping to get, huge success on the inside line. That's where all the space is there at the moment. And but the Kilkenny full back line were phenomenal. Like Mikey Butler, he's really after, like, as a defender, you talk about a guy going off with the ball, but as just a defender, he's flicking, he's tipping, but all on the ball. And Tommy Walsh and the other, our young Tommy, I thought he was outstanding again the weekend, and Conor Delaney. So, yeah, I think the full back lines are very important in the modern game. All right, we'll get a chance to talk about Kilkenny a little bit later on in the season. Obviously, it looks like they're going to go deep. You wanted to give us a shout out this week? Yeah, so shout out this week, Ger. I suppose this is kind of based on when I was young, Ger. I used to read this book, probably read it about 10, 15, 20 times. It was called Giants of the Ash. So Brendan Fulham, a man from Wexford, he was write this book, and he'd list out maybe 20, 25 players, like Christy Ring, Jimmy Doyle, the Rackards. I'd say 2 or 3 of the Rackards were even in it, Eddie Kerr. But as a young fella reading, 9, 10 years of age, what are they doing? Like, it gave little insights into the greatest players of the game. Jimmy Doyle he used to have a sheepdog. He'd go after the sheepdog for the day, poke around the ball, and dog go bring it back to him. Christy Ring used to go off with his, eye lorry, but he'd bring a hurl and a ball in a bucket. He'd try and hit the ball into the bucket. And these stories are inspirational for young lads. And I just thought it was fantastic. So my shout-outs, I suppose, they're going to be based on my Giants of the Ash. And the third one up is going to be from the Tipperary, the County of Tipperary, the GAA Brackens club in Templemore. And it's Eamon Corcoran. Number 5, yellow helmet. He was just inspirational. When I was 2003, my first year, and this is where my, I suppose, skepticism of video analysis goes there. I was marking Eamon in the 2003 All-Ireland semi-final, And before the game, you know, the lads are saying, watch how he hits the ball. You know, it's your first year up. They're trying to watch where he runs, where does he pick up the ball. So I said, I'll do a bit of video analysis on him. And so I was looking at, obviously there was no kind of Sky that time at Hunting. And so I was probably just looking at the previous game or watching the Sunday game. But I had to watch it 3 times, probably at the tape. And I had to watch it 3 times because first 10 minutes you're watching it, but then you forget about it. You get totally lost in the game. So that happened about 3 times. So I think I gave up in the end. But went out to mark him anyway in that semi-final. He was phenomenal. But talk about Cork the weekend, the will to win that ball. Christy Ring used to always say, if you want to win a ball in championship, you have to go there with just a will to win, a confidence that nobody else was going to win that ball, only you. Well, that's what I felt like marking Corcoran in that All-Ireland semi-final. And he was phenomenal in that game. There was no bones about it. And you know the way to say, you know, you should never meet your heroes. But marking him that day, he was everything that I was after looking at on the television. He was everything that I was after reading about him. He was just awesome. Like, say, when I played interfirms with the Bank of Ireland, and I was on the same team as him for a number of years later on in my career. And like, I played with players that left everything on the field. You go out into a game, the last thing your manager nearly says to you in the dressing room going out is, leave everything on the field. Give it everything. Well, I played with Jackie Turrell. I played with Noel Hickey. I played with Taggy Fogarty. From the Tullaroan, I played with Stevie Marr. These were guys that you didn't even have to say anything to them. You knew these lads were going to leave everything on the field. Well, them boys were the best I ever probably played with. But Eamon Corcoran was just as good. Wow. And that's from playing against them with Tipperary and playing with him with the Bank. And this could be just a match in November against the Army. They play the Army every year, in the Curragh camp. Just gave it everything. You're kind of awestruck playing beside him because he gives it everything so much. And Brian Whelan then, talk about reading the game. Like, Brian Whelan was just wherever the ball was. And how did he get there? He didn't know himself. He was just there. Eamon Corcoran was similar. Because like Brian Whelan was fast. Eamon Corcoran wasn't terribly fast. But he was always where the ball was. You know, Fitzgibbon Cups, you look at the Fitzgibbon now, I know there's a bit of, I suppose, but back then, the Fitzgibbon Cup was one of the main competitions in the hurling calendar. That it was a Fitzgibbon Cup weekend, and he got player of the weekend, player of the tournament 2 years running. That'll tell you how good he was. And the standard that time was, it was next to inter-county. And, you know, there was no going off playing with your county for a couple of weeks, come back and play the matches. That time, when you were a Fitzgibbon hurler, you trained with him for a couple of months before, and that was your club, we'll say, for a couple of months.
Yeah.
And so I suppose, shout this to again why he's a giant of the ash, without a shadow of a doubt, Eamon Corcoran, Tipperary.
All right, good stuff. Good stuff. That must have been pretty intimidating for the Army team when they're looking, oh shit, it's Tommy Walsh and Eamon Corcoran. Wow, I'm going to play inside forward. Who are you marking?
And here we own Kelly full forward, and we've Keith Higgins on the wing. But who we were playing against her? You had Bonner Maher was playing for them, Owen Larkin, Paul Murphy.
All right.
Yeah, it was funny. If you have time, there's one funny story. We had a lad, Chap Clear, you know, and he was on our team. And he was a great Kenny hurler. He was on Kenny Bannon for a couple of years, but his name was Chap, and and he gave away a free around the half back line. And the lad in the Army thought his name was Chops. And when he gave away the free anyway, the lad I was marking shouts down the ref, "Now ref, that's why they call him Chops Clear." Well, his name was actually Chap. So, but no, there were great games. But the Army, we lost a lot of them, Jared. That was good. Like, Kieran Brennan would have been over them. You know, the Army team at the time. But no, there were great games, in fairness. Who we played for him as well was Andrew Shaughnessy.
Right. Okay. Wow. What a legend. Yeah.
Oh, they were real games, like, you know.
Tommy, we got to go. We could talk about this all night, all morning even. Thanks a million. That's good stuff. Cheers.
Thanks a million. Bye.
This week's shout out from Tommy, a giant of the ash. OTB AM is brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day at 8:49. A little bit delayed. Time for virtual insanity.
You have entered Power Drive.
JD.
Morning, lads.
I feel like this has kind of crept up on us a little bit.
Has it?
A little bit.
I suppose PGA was always the last major, wasn't it? And now it's the second one, and it's in May, and it's a bit of an unusual time. So it is all coming thick and fast now.
And the Greg Norman stuff.
Yeah. And that's all they were talking about yesterday. Yeah. Woods and Rory, they weren't really talking about tomorrow. So it's interesting.
Right, what have you got for us?
Southern Hills, Oklahoma, Tulsa. Starts tomorrow, and it is a par 70. It is 7,500 yards. It's a long course, but they've changed the course since it was last host of a major tournament back in 2007. They removed a lot of the trees. It's going to be windy down in Oklahoma. You need to be a good chipper around the greens, a lot of slopes around the greens. So it's going to test all the facets of a player's game. The headline tip, you got to obviously, you never gamble more than you can afford if you're getting involved. A lot of bookmakers going to 50 odds up to 12 places. I'm just going to go with the best recommendations I can see. These are on OTBsports.com and on the OTB app already now. Headline tip, I'm going to do this as I always do. Patrick Cantlay for 750 each way, 22 to 1. Won on his last start with Xander Schauffele in the team event in New Orleans. In the tournament before that, he lost a playoff to Jordan Spieth at Hilton Head. He puts very well on the bent grass greens. He's going to see this week. He's number 5 in the world. That time Patrick Cantlay contended in a major championship. I think it's possible he can do that now. Is a good win player, is good on approach shots, has got a really calm temperament, and I think he's really primed to contend. Patrick Cantlay is the headline tip in the PGA Championship this week. The second one is Rory at 16 to 1 for 5 each way. Rory is playing really well. Look at his putting stats, 66th on tour last year, 38th now. Was brilliant at the Masters. I think that could be a breakthrough moment. That 64 to finish second behind Scotty Scheffler. Then was 5th at the Wells Fargo Championship. Likes the course, drives it long, drives it straight. Is beautiful around the greens with his deft chipping touch and his putting better. So I think Rory definitely can possibly this year break that 8-year duck for the major championship. Third one is Xander Schauffele, the Olympic champion. 4 each way, 25 to 1. Shot a 61 on the final day of the Byron Nelson last Sunday. Has found something once again. Has got a great major record, 5 US Open starts, 5 top 10s, has had 2 top 3s at the Masters. The only thing that's missing is a major on his CV. He's a class player, drives it long, has got a really good all-round game, Xander Schauffele. So they're the 3 main ones, Cantlay, Rory, Schauffele. There's over 100 of the top 100 in the world. There's the deepest field for major you can get, 156 players. You got to be looking at some outsiders as well, folks. Thomas Pieters is 160 to 1 for 3 each way. He's third on the DP World Tour rankings. He won against a class field in Abu Dhabi back in January. He doesn't like playing in the States. He was in the top 10 in Belgium last week. If he's in the mood, he has got the talent to really contend here. He's been in the top 10 of a PGA before, back in 2018. And he drives it a mile. He's got a good scrambling around the greens. Thomas Pieters is a talented golfer at 160 to 1 for 3 each way. He's the best outsider of the outsiders. The other ones, Christian Bezuidenhout is 125 to 1 for 2 each way. Putted the lights out last week in Byron Nelson, was in the top 20, tied for 12th. Was in the top 10 through 54 holes of the PGA last year. Is a brilliant putter in the top 10 in scrambling stats. He's only 27 years of age. I think he's a player they're going to see a lot more of. And the last one, the Irish Open champion of last year, Lucas Herbert, is 250 to 1 for €1 each way. A really good win player. Plays well in difficult conditions, which I think they're going to get this week. Won in Bermuda at the end of last year, was in the top 10 in Bay Hill. His record, apart from that, has been very patchy, but I think he's got a bit of guts. I think he's got something about him, Lucas Herbert. So the outsiders, Lucas Herbert, 250s. Bezuidenhout, 125s. Thomas Pieters is the main outsider, 160 to 1. And then the 3 bigger ones, Schauffele, McIlroy and Cantlay in descending order, guys. I think Shane Lowry will have a good week. I think the course will suit him. He's playing really well. Seamus Power is playing well. So hopefully with the Irish lads in Harrington as well involved, we're going to have a good week. Jordan Spieth's going for the career Grand Slam. He's playing with Woods and McIlroy. It's going to be box office television the first 2 days. And I hope you've got a great 4 days of TV.
All right, JD, thanks very much.
All right, lads.
This week's edition of Virtual Insanity. It's 8:54 this morning. The football pod are going on the road. Royal Theatre in Cathal Bar on Thursday the 2nd of June. Tickets are on sale now. Go to otbsports.com/events to get yours today, and stay tuned to OTB for details on more shows to come. To be with a chance to win a pair of tickets to the show, just tell us, who is this?
Iran played last night. They're playing Portugal, and a lot of the stuff that's going on, you know that this is in or out. You know it's cut or thrust.
Donegal legend there. Strong Celtic links. You can comment wherever you're watching on YouTube, or you can tweet your answer to @OffTheBallAM. It's 8:54. It's time for us to turn our attention to rugby. Keith Wood is with us. Keith, good morning to you.
Good morning. How are you? I was just laughing over your virtual insanity and wondering whether that ages you, actually, and whether you've ever worn those odd hats. It was That was the first thought that came to my head this morning.
There you go. It ages all of us. Owen hasn't a clue what we're talking about.
No, of course he doesn't.
We're talking about Jamiroquai.
Yeah, do you remember?
Yeah. Who did I see? Oh, there was someone in Eurovision actually the last day. Was it the winner? Was it the winner of Eurovision had a Jamiroquai hat on? I don't know.
I think that kind of places you in a different position altogether, that you're watching Eurovision, but that's okay, Owen, I suppose.
Why does it turn you off, Keith? I would have had you down as a massive Eurovision fan.
I'm not a Eurovision fan. The only joy of Eurovision back in the day was listening to Terry Wogan absolutely taking the mickey out of everybody. But ever since then, no, that's gone. That's gone for me.
A good Munster man. But speaking of Europe, see what I did there? Leinster's performance the weekend was as good as we've ever seen. Obviously, they have to get the job done for us to be able to fully enjoy it. But while the final is still to be decided, we should enjoy it because it was a level of excellence which we've rarely seen in Irish rugby, if ever.
Yeah, I think that's a cracking summation for it, and it's not wanting to put the mockers on it, and that they don't kind of go there and get to actually hold the trophy at the end of it. But their performances over the last number of weeks have been pretty extraordinary. They manage their players really, really well, and that's used as a criticism from the British teams and the French teams, which I consider to be one of the greatest compliments we can get to the Irish system and to Leinster in particular. But they looked in control from start to finish, and to watch a team like Toulouse, and of course they were tired from the previous week, but that wouldn't count until maybe the last 10 or 15 minutes of the first half, and maybe the last half an hour of the second half. But for the rest of it, it was the manner in which Leinster were playing. Look, I was reflecting on it for a couple of things. One, I was being particularly protective of Johnny Sexton 2 or 3 years ago, and maybe protective of the number 10 jersey in Ireland, knowing that we weren't getting players through the system, that we were having some players there, but none of them were able to oust him. And I would have said 2 or 3 years ago, he was at risk of getting smashed and knocked out of all kilter, if we're honest. But the manner in which both Ireland and Leinster play is he's incredibly well protected. And for me, he played a directing role for all the time he was on the pitch, of such a standard the other day that it looked as if he just turned back time. And he was, yes, he's not as fast as he used to be, but it was a commanding performance. I thought he was brilliant. I thought he deserved whatever plaudit he got. And actually, if Ireland and Leinster are able to continue to play in that fashion and protect him, we will get him to the World Cup. And not just that. And my fear was he'd get to the World Cup, but wouldn't be able to deliver. At the moment, he's delivering at the highest standard. So for that alone, it was wonderful. But then everybody else, they weren't cameos. Every other player on the field stood up. Just great.
A quick question on Sexton while you bring it up, right? The announcement during the week of the 2 midweek games against the New Zealand Maoris, very interesting. It means that those 5 games now in New Zealand offer both the opportunity for a historic victory on New Zealand soil of one of the 3 tests, but also an opportunity to develop some players. So I suspect, initially I thought that maybe they won't bring some of those front line players and they'll bring a big squad, but it'll be kind of, slightly diluted first choice. Now I feel like they might just bring this massive squad where they do like 40 players or more, and it divides into 2, and there's a midweek test and there's a test series, but actually everybody gets to work and understand exactly what it's like. And in that context, Sexton probably does go on the tour. Maybe even Cian Healy goes on the tour. Like players who you thought, well, they'll just keep them at home to make sure that they get as long out of them as possible. But actually the benefit of having those 2 extra matches, it just changes the whole tone of things for me.
Well, it does if the squad is huge, and it means the RFU are going to dig deep to make certain they can bring that number of players. But it makes a huge difference. I'm a huge fan of midweek matches, and in times when the level wasn't at that standard or the hits weren't at that standard, you can get away with doing it with 1 squad. My dad actually went on a Lions tour that had 33 matches, and which is just kind of crazy to think of. You'd have a 33-match tour. But I know those things have changed since, obviously. But the midweek matches are brilliant to get a sense of the history of rugby, and that it's a bit more than a game. And when you go down to New Zealand, you're going to get a fairly high insight into that. But we do need to blood players, and it isn't blood them to give them a cap. It's to blood them to get them used to different types of pressure all the time. And what we have seen over the last few weeks, some people haven't reacted as well under pressure, but now they've learned from that. So those failures, if you want to call them that, are the areas where you learn from most. But the opportunity to be exposed against fast-running, very hard, very physical teams, having to perform and turn up every couple of days, that gives you a huge sense of togetherness for the squad. So I don't know if they'd have it as two separate squads, and I hope there'd be some level of interactivity to it. And go back to something that Donal Lenihan did in 1989 on the Lions tour, and they're the only real comparators to having midweek matches at the moment. And he captained the midweek team, and the onus that was on him was he had to deliver for the midweek team so that they could put pressure on the team that was playing on the Saturday, and that every player had to play very well, because there was a string of players behind them who were going to take their place if they didn't play well. That's a great opportunity for the senior and the junior players that go out onto that tour, because you're going to be in a position where if there's an injury, you're in. So you're focused all the time. And for me, it's the first time we've had this big play on getting it right for 18 months' time. I think that's pretty impressive.
To go back to Leinster at the weekend, and that tangent aside, are there any issues that you see from that game and from La Rochelle last year that persist, or is it a different test that Leinster will pose for O'Gara and his brains trust and the players on the field?
Look, I think an awful lot of it comes down. The one weakness where Leinster were last week was at scrum time. If there was any change or if there was any lack of concentration at any stage. And Toulouse went for certain scrums, they didn't go for all of them. La Rochelle, I think, would do something similar. I thought it was a very complete performance, because it looked as if Leinster were playing at a high level of aggression. I'm surprised they didn't target Dupont as much as Munster did. They did a couple of times, but not anywhere near as much as Munster did. They just played their own game, and it's a great sense of confidence in that, to say, yeah, they did something really well, but actually we do things differently. And for me, there was a fluidity in it. The concentration had to be at 100%. My view against Leicester the week previously was their concentration was excellent for about 25 minutes, and then it didn't need to be. And I thought they emotionally took their foot off the pedal a little. And when that happens, not every pass sticks, and a whole variety of different things can go wrong. They still had enough, and always knew they had enough to go up and win. It looked like they felt on Saturday that they had to play at that level of accuracy throughout. And I mean, I think they left a few scores behind them. But I always think they're going to, in the manner in which they play, because they are playing percentages, but they are taking a risk as well. And I think Leinster a few years ago were playing percentages incredibly well and better than anybody else, and then they were stopped. They have to take the risks, and with that, some tries won't be scored, some mistakes will be made. But for me, it was a complete performance.
And some tries will probably be scored at the other end as well. That kind of seem like they're out of the blue, especially when you're up against some of the world's best players. I presume that they've sat down and analysed that risk-reward setup and said this is worth it because of the scores that we're going to get.
I think so too, but also Toulouse got a breakaway try. They didn't look like scoring for 20 minutes, so Leinster were in pretty much total control of the game. I like the performances of some of the players as well. I think different players are leading. Van der Fleer is just reaching unbelievable levels of performance. James Lowe is having an impact pretty much every single time he gets a chance. Gibson Park is unrecognisable to 12 months ago. It's I think a telling element for coaches out there that sometimes you need to give players their head and give them the confidence to play. And actually, if you don't get picked, you tend not to play to performance. And sometimes when you get the opportunity, if you take it, he grows week on week. And I just thought he was phenomenal. And I think it takes a lot of pressure off Johnny Sexton as well, that there is another player that's making a whole array of decisions at different times in the game, that it doesn't just sit on one person. And I think that's been part of that change to Leinster.
Can we just take a moment to worship at the altar of the left boot of James Lowe? Like, Jesus Christ, that thing's massive.
There's a Gary Larson cartoon, so it's for a guy doing arm wrestling, and he loses with his right arm, and he says, well, why don't we try with the left? And you can see his left arm is in shadow, and his left arm is about 5 times the size of the right arm. Well, that's kind of similar to James Lowe's boot. When he does connect with it, it's an incredible relieving kick. I remember mentioning a long time ago David Campese in his last 2 years with Australia. He lost his pace entirely. I mean, it was amazing. He still had a step, but it was getting him into trouble rather than out of trouble. But he developed a skill. He just practiced because he still wanted to play. And he could kick a spiral with his left leg down the full distance and stay within the tram lines. He could kick it 60 yards down the field. He could do the same with his right. And it became an incredible and potent relieving tool to have if they were under huge pressure. And we're seeing that with James Lowe scoring tries, but he is the go-to guy to hose the ball down the middle of the field. So, at different times, they're not under any pressure because they know they can kick it 60 yards.
The job that O'Gara has done is probably something that we take a little bit for granted because we talk to him all the time, and at the same time we don't have a bunch of Irish coaches who have gone abroad and reached the very top level as consistently as he has done. We have a few, right? Obviously, Conor O'Shea, Mark McCall, they've put together great careers, but not as quickly as this. Like he's still looks like he could come on and kick some of those penalties his half is missing. It's a phenomenal achievement for him at this early juncture of his career.
Absolutely, and he still wears his bitterness incredibly comfortably. He's angry with everybody. He's still bitching and moaning whenever he gets a chance, as if that's a change from anything he's ever had. I remember saying it when he went down to he went to France first. I thought, God, that's an interesting move for him. That's going to be tough. Then he went down to New Zealand, and that's unbelievably rare. And we'll find this out during the summer, but the Kiwis don't particularly care about anybody else. It's their way is right, and it's the best way, and they have the best system, and they're a bit dismissive of most. But I can tell you, so having spoken to some of the players, that the esteem under which Raj was dealt with by players and management alike, and fans, which is an interesting one to turn over down in New Zealand. They just liked the different input, and he was considered a player with a high degree of excellence. He was a coach that they wanted to listen to because he thought of things differently. He had a good emotional sense of things, which in a lot of cases New Zealand try not to do. But they liked that difference. And he learned an awful lot from it. That's a very difficult, unworn path to go down to New Zealand and then to come back up and get a chance and sit in the shadow last year and then have to do it on his own this year. That's a very fast elevation. I think he's worn it well in his bitchy comments, in his arguments with other coaches on the sideline, in his drive for success. I think he's done an extraordinary job. And it's quite interesting. We often talk about budgets and different things like that. He's gone to a club that is rooted in the community. So I think that's probably a very good fit for Raj. But he's his own man doing his own thing. And I think it's phenomenal to watch. And you mentioned Mark McCall. Mark McCall has done that with Saracens. He's been there for a huge period of time. Conor O'Shea has done it in his way as well. it's quite public the way Rog has done it. And Saracens have a different structure, actually, for Mark McCall. So it isn't really all about Mark McCall. It kind of is all about Rog. And I don't mean that it's not all about Rog, but it's all about Rog in La Rochelle.
It's on his shoulders, yeah.
It's on his shoulders, and the structures that are there are about promoting the coach to be the hero or the fall guy. That's a really tough place to be. So, look, I think he's done an incredible job. I thought he got out of jail at the weekend. Ohio West, he scored the try at the end, but he put the team under huge pressure, missing those penalties. And those penalties need to go over in those matches. And for them to do well against Leinster will require every single opportunity taken. And I love the idea of keeping the ball, that style that they have. But I want them to look inside to who they're passing to. There must have been 10 passes inside with no look passes that went to their opponents. And there requires a bit more discipline required for that, only because Leinster will exploit that entirely. So I think he's done an extraordinary job. Whether they're going to be good enough to beat Leinster, in my mind, you can't look away from Leinster being champions. The only plus for Rog is that it's not away, and there is that psyche, which is extraordinary. And I actually think it helped La Rochelle to not be playing in Racing's ground, because it just affects the French teams. There should be a study done on it. Why is it that's the case? Why is there? It's like an imposter syndrome. Once you play away from home, when you really shouldn't be there, you shouldn't win. But down in Marseille, it's an incredible place. One of the great places to watch rugby, one of the great cities, and the enjoyment that you're going to have beforehand. Like, that's some trip for Leinster fans to go down to see. So that's the only thing I would say. That I don't think they'll be as tight as they were in the semi-final.
All right, Keith, we'll leave it there for now. We'll obviously preview that final in plenty of time. Thanks a million. Cheers.
Brilliant. Cheers, lads.
It's Keith Wood giving us his thoughts there. OTB AM brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. The Football Pod final opportunity to enter this competition this morning. It's a mystery voice. Who's this?
Iran played last night. They're playing Portugal, and a lot of the stuff that's going on, you know that this is in or out. You know it's cut or thrust.
Yeah, so the roadshow, the first Football Pod ever roadshow, is on in the Royal Theatre in Cathal on the 2nd of June. That's 2 weeks away tomorrow. Tickets are on sale now, otbsports.com/events. To be in with a chance, you need to identify that voice. Strong Celtic and Donegal connections. Just leave a comment wherever you're watching, or you can tweet us at @OffTheBallAM. It is 12 minutes past 9. Phil Egan is standing by. We're going to get to him next.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first.
Those admissions, you know that if the guards are listening,
If you're from the west of Ireland, I think you can, so shifting Cathal for us was literally walking them a drive, as it would be known. You'd walk them about five to 8 miles, Graham, even through a town with crossroads, and you'd be hoping that they wouldn't go into the lovely.
That's almost tantric.
Yeah,
that's almost tantric.
It sounds like it's something from the 19th century, but we're talking about the mid-90s here. And I was shifting Cathal probably more than I was shifting women at the time. Anyway, when I said before the break, after the break we'll talk about Diego Simeone with the man himself, I of course didn't actually mean Diego Simeone. The man himself is obviously Graham Hunter. Graham, I think you know what I was talking about.
Have you subscribed to the OTB Football Podcast?
Aston Villa home last game of the season doesn't seem enough, but I just can't that picture in Steven Gerrard walking out of the Etihad, wearing that Liverpool jersey underneath the suit, a bit like Superman Clark Kent. Yeah. Heavy irony there if he was to go there with Aston Villa and take points off City. I mean, that would be just Hollywood stuff, wouldn't it? If that was to happen,
Finally,
Liverpool
won the league for Liverpool.
That's what I'm saying.
Subscribe now to the OTB Football Podcast stream wherever you get your podcasts, and download the OTB Sports app.
FBD Insurance knows this sound spells trouble for van drivers. But if you're an existing FBD customer, you'll get 15% off a new van insurance policy. It's how we're keeping you and your van on the road. Visit fbd.ie or contact your local branch. FBD Insurance. Support. It's what we do. Terms and conditions apply. 15% discount available on new commercial motor policies only when an existing FBD farm, business, car or home policy is in place. FBD Insurance Group Limited, trading as FBD Insurance, is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland. Commercial motor insurance is underwritten by FBD Insurance PLC.
OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
Here's what's on OTB Sports Radio for you today. Manu Petit at 1 o'clock. Koi Gig from 3 o'clock. Our retro panels at 4. You'll have to tune in to find out which one that is. Inside Porrick Harrington's gaff is at 6, and the show is live tonight from 7. You can follow Off the Ball across all of our social platforms. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can download the OTB Sports app to get the latest and best in sports content and analysis. At 9:15, Phil Egan is with us. Phil, good morning to you.
Morning, lads. How are you doing?
If Villa help us out on Sunday, Ger will be held aloft on Monday morning as Klopp's secret weapon, says Paul McGee. Paul was obviously listening to the show, as was Jurgen Klopp last week, when we were saying, rest your team. The only thing that matters now is the Champions League. And he rested his team like a gunslinger, and they did their jobs last night, and Klopp is a genius.
Yeah, I think he had to rest so many players because of extra time. I know we would have talked about the FA Cup final on Friday on the kickoff, and I remember saying to yourself and David Connolly that I wouldn't be surprised if it went to extra time. And I also said it was the last thing Liverpool needed, and that's exactly what happened. And it was the last thing they needed. You think of Van Dijk didn't even play extra time. Andy Robertson cramped up. Obviously Salah was gone in the first half. But it just meant that certain players were taken out of selection for last night. Now, he had a few reserves, but he didn't need to bring on Diaz to try and win the game. The way it panned out last night is kind of how I expected, where it was going to be one of those games where Liverpool would just get the win, but it wouldn't be plain sailing. And there was like the last 5 minutes where Southampton had a bit of a go, but I thought Konate was immense. He was the only outfield player that featured in the FA Cup final. Well, then again, he only played extra time the other day as well. He played the full game the other day. It was Matip that came on in extra time. So Alisson and Konate, but Konate's been sensational for Liverpool this season. You think back to last January when they had to sign any centre halves and they bring in Kabak and Ben Davis, and everyone was like, what are they doing? But they were holding out for Konate and patience. Like, I think Liverpool fans, sometimes some Liverpool fans can get a bit
careful now. You're
frustrated by a lack of signings.
Yeah, go on.
A lack of signings where
Liverpool fans are what? Impatient?
You think like there's a player that they need, why not go and get it? But Klopp and his recruitment process is very much, they have their eye on a player and you've got to wait for the right time. And Konate is your prime example of that, is what I mean, really.
That's a trophy in itself, winning the transfer market, of course, and Liverpool still reeling from losing a couple of trophies last season in that regard. Manchester City, of course, have already won this year's transfer window, so could have been a quintuple if they just got their act together.
Yeah, but see, even that, right? Erling Haaland, straight away I see people thinking Liverpool need to make a statement signing. Like, they don't. Like, Liverpool have finished this season stronger than Manchester City. Okay, City have signed Erling Haaland. Liverpool will probably, I would think if there was one position they need to sign another player, it's midfield. I think they're a little bit light in midfield.
We've seen how reluctant they are to break their wage bill from Mo Salah.
Yeah.
Should they have made more of a pitch for Mbappe, given how powerful they are at the moment? Like, is there no world in which Kylian Mbappe could somehow have been given the transfer fee up front, and like your weekly wage is the same as
signing on fee is actually
Sadio Mane? Yeah. Or, well, like 6 years' wages. I'm going to give you 80 million in one go, while paid over the usual installment plan.
Doesn't feel very Liverpool.
Is there no way that they could have made that work?
I mean, I think you have to trust what Jurgen Klopp wants to do, and you know, he could think if you bring in Mbappe, an amazing player, but if everyone knows that he's on double or treble the money, does that cause a disharmony in the changing room? Now, people would say if Mbappe's banging in 30 goals a season, it wouldn't make a difference. But I think you have to just trust what Jurgen Klopp is doing. And the fact that I always felt Klopp was the most important contract. That if Mo Salah doesn't sign a new contract, then you got to trust Jurgen Klopp to get it right. Whether he says, right, let Salah leave on a free next summer, or replace him this summer, you have to trust what Jurgen Klopp is going to do, because he's proven over the last few years that he knows what he's doing. He's a pretty good manager.
Peter Ram in the comments, is Matip up there as one of the best free signings in the last 15 years?
He certainly is, and I think he was almost written off because of his injury profile, and that's been key to Liverpool's success this season, is the fact that he's been available for most of the season, where you think last season he was one of the last of the senior fit centre halves to get injured, and then that was pretty much it. Liverpool finished the season with Phillips and Williams as their centre halves. But now Klopp has a dilemma: who does he pick for the Champions League final beside Van Dijk? Is it Matip or Konate? But Liverpool fans are in a position where it doesn't matter. They don't. They'd be thinking, okay, that's an interesting choice, but there won't be an outrage if Konate is picked. There won't be an outrage if Matip is picked in the Champions League final. So that kind of says where they're at strength-wise at centre half.
In the ad break, we had a clip from Kenny Cunningham ages ago talking about Steven Gerrard wearing the Liverpool jersey under his suit like Clark Kent, and so obviously it's how Hollywood would it be for him to do something at the weekend for his team. For Philip Coutinho to do something at the weekend. Stephen asks, can Steven Gerrard finally win a Premier League for Liverpool? Roll on Sunday.
The thing, like, I commented on the fact that, like, that's that clip was done ages ago. I've heard that roll in so many ads, and it's quite prophetic. Obviously, it doesn't feel so now, but if you went back a couple of months, it was the Tottenham game that could have been the one that could have derailed Liverpool. And then similarly for Manchester City, then you were potentially looking at West Ham last weekend more than Aston Villa, and I know that was half the job done, but maybe Aston Villa was always going to be the fixture that Liverpool fans would have been most excited about from Manchester City's perspective, but the narrative has lined up absolutely beautifully.
That's it really has. I was watching the game last night, and when Nathan Redmond scored, I just thought, are Southampton going to deprive us of the few days of build-up of, can Steven Gerrard get a result for Aston Villa at the Etihad?
We were talking about this outside in the office, Phil. Like, can Liverpool not offer the city of Liverpool not offer the city of Birmingham some inducement, something?
What, the Kylian Mbappe money that they've saved can just go to building a new community centre in Birmingham or something?
Yeah, the community centre is pretty boring. Like, we want something.
A hotel.
We want something completely like a statue of the devil or something. Something that you're not going to spend your own money on. Right?
Well, look, I think Villa.
Kenny Cunningham.
What was the statue in Ennis Diamond? Whatever that one was.
I don't think Villa, if people think Villa are going to roll over, I don't think that's the case. I think Gerrard obviously is looking to hit the ground running next season in his first full season in charge. So there's going to be players there playing for their futures. And we know Villa are going to have money in the summer. They've already secured the services of Coutinho. So Gerrard can be telling his squad, it was like, this is just a sign of what's to come. Do you want to be part of this? Here's a chance to show me that you're good enough to go to the home of the current champions, the team that could be the Premier League champions by the end of play. Show me what you got. And it's up to Villa to see can they do it. The thing is,
and
with a lot of these,
like, here's $1 million quid each.
I just googled a statue in Ennis Diamond. I've never seen this before.
Oh no! All right, what is it a statue of again?
A headline in Irish Central: sinister statue of mythical Irish creature put on hold in County Clare. It's a puka of Ennis Diamond sculpture, which was put on hold as a result of backlash.
The mob in Ennis Diamond were not having that.
Holy
God! They banned it from their town.
This is absolutely terrifying.
Yeah, which Villa player will be in statue form outside Anfield if they could do Liverpool a favour?
Stevie G.
Well, I think he's getting a statue anyway, probably at some stage. But
this would cement things. How much does he celebrate victory? If say he pulled it off, like, and what's the team talk? Look, this is going to be really good for me. This is a good. I might get it. I might get my dream move if you win this game for me today, lads. A little bit down the line.
Yeah, I think I can see Gerrard's press conference. Well, obviously he's got one today because they play Burnley tomorrow, and that's a factor as well. And Klopp has talked about it, the fact that Villa have to play Burnley tomorrow. Now it is.
Oh, now he cares.
It's a home game. It's Villa's last home game of the season. So, and obviously it's a pivotal game in terms of the relegation scrap as well. So I can see Gerrard being asked about it and he say, look, we've got a job to do against Burnley. Maybe in his press conference later in the week when it's about the City game. Again, he was quite quick to nip it in the bud when they were playing Liverpool last week, where he just said, you want the headline that Gerrard ruins Liverpool's title challenge, but I'm here to do a job for Villa, and that's to try and win football games. So I don't think Gerrard he's not gonna play up for this. But
the other thing is, Klopp's not going anywhere anytime soon, so this isn't really going to have any bearing on whether or not he ends up being good enough. Like, there's no signs yet that he's an international quality top 5 manager in the world. That's the level that Liverpool are going to need to replace Klopp eventually. So
yeah, and in terms of Klopp and Liverpool as well, even if they don't win the league, I think what they've done in the second half of the season, obviously winning the trophies, and they could win the Champions League as well, but they've also shown to City that they're not going away. Obviously last season wasn't a good season for Liverpool, but they still recovered somewhat to finish third with a host of injuries and
created depth.
Yeah, and you think at the start of the season, not many people were tipping Liverpool to win the league. I think everyone, I always think at the start of the season, you're always going to go with City, with Guardiola there. A lot of people fancy Chelsea because Lukaku had come in and he was the missing piece, and they were coming into the season as the Champions League winners. But Liverpool have shown that last season was a blip, and now they're City must be just thinking, what have we got to do to shake these people off? Because they were 14 points clear at one stage. I know Liverpool had a game in hand, and Liverpool have just kept
if they
coming
scored the
at
penalty at the weekend, that would have been this would all largely be moot.
Yeah.
Man City were away to Brighton on the last day of the 2018-2019 season. When it was this close, they ended up on 98 points. Liverpool ended up on 97 points. Liverpool won 2-0 that day. And to create a little bit of excitement, Man City went a goal down.
Yeah, Glenn Murray scored. I remember we were doing that game, and for 30 or 40 seconds, the dream was on. Liverpool were ahead in the as things stand table. And Klopp actually talked about it, where he didn't know the score, but he heard this cheer and he said, I think there's been a goal at Brighton. But then he said, obviously, that went pretty quickly.
Yeah.
City come back, win. Handy enough. A few hours later, Chris Hughton is sacked.
Yeah, I was fully sure that's what was going to happen last weekend against West Ham, that Manchester City were going to win the game 3-4-1 once they went 1-0 down, and that's not what happened at all. So from a neutral perspective, hopefully that's
yeah, look, I think Villa will actually get chances. I'm thinking back to certain,
the Bernardo Silva scored one of the goals of all time in that game. Am I thinking about the right game?
Mara scored as well in that one. Obviously, Aguero was.
Oh, sorry, I'm thinking of the Villa City game. Was that Christmas?
Earlier this season, yeah, on the counter-attack. It was brilliant. Yeah, and look, the grim reading for Liverpool fans is Villa have played City 6 times in the Premier League since they've come back, and they've lost every game. That was 2-1 earlier in the season. Gerrard was in charge, but the thing about it is that watching the Newcastle game and even the Watford game at the Etihad, City scored early, but both teams, Watford and Newcastle, had chances. Now the problem is, when you get a chance against City, you know that you're not going to get many, so there's pressure on whoever the ball falls to, and that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to put it away. But Villa will cause 1 or 2 moments, I'd imagine, for City, given that Ollie Watkins tends to occupy a couple of defenders because he just never stops running. So he'll definitely fancy his chances if Villa can create a couple of passes and create that chance to get a ball in behind. But it's very hard to see City not winning that game.
Yeah, okay. We have a couple of minutes left to talk about what happened in the playoffs last night. Obviously, Nottingham Forest are through to the playoff final.
Yeah.
Fairly horrific scenes afterwards with the pitch invasion, which, pitch invasion is great, and then it's like, oh, that's actually awful.
Yeah, and we saw, Forest said it before the game, because we saw on Monday night with the Huddersfield-Luton game, Huddersfield win, and there's a pitch invasion. Actually, the bizarre thing at the end of that game was, before the full-time whistle went, the assistant referee must know that the whistle's about to go, and just ran across the pitch just before the whistle blows, because he knew the pitch invasion was coming. So Forest, all in the build-up to last night's game, do not invade the pitch, please. Forest win on penalties, pitch invasion, and there's always that danger something will happen, and unfortunately it happened last night. Billy Sharp gets blindsided with a headbutt. Now that guy has been arrested, and I can only imagine he's going to get the book thrown at him, but just awful. And it just shows that if there's that many people on a pitch, the players, the officials, management, coaching staff, they're so vulnerable with that many people on the pitch. Where, what kind of idiot does that? Forest are on the brink of returning to the Premier League for the first time since 1999. This should be a euphoric moment. And one of your first instincts is to go for Billy Sharp. He used to play for Forest, by the way. And there was nothing that he said to suggest that he didn't enjoy his time at Forest. You know, he scored goals for Forest. He's a very well-respected striker who's done the business in the Championship for years. Obviously, had some success in the Premier League, and he gets cleaned out of it like that. It was just awful. So I'd imagine there's going to be a severe punishment handed down. In terms of the playoffs, I absolutely loved them. I mean, you're watching Southampton-Liverpool, you know the Premier League title is on the line, but then you turn over to the Championship and there's just that desperation. Like Gary Weaver, by the way, the commentator. Gary Weaver in the playoffs, it's magic. And just the drama that it creates. And you kind of thought, somebody put up a stat before the penalties and I retweeted it and people laughed at me after because it turned out to be completely the opposite. But Samba had not got a good record on penalties, whereas Fotherington had a much better record on penalties, and then Samba's the hero.
He saved 3 out of 5, did he?
Yeah. His water bottle's been doing the rounds on social media.
Why? What was the story with it?
All the Sheffield United penalty takers, what they do.
Oh, right.
And actually, the way the picture is taken, I don't know if you saw Conor Howard's penalty. It's not great. He hits it down the middle, Samba just stays there and just slaps it away. But it looks like, see the angle of the water bottle in the picture, it looks like beside Howrahan, it has STA. So does that mean stand or stay? As in just stand there, stay there. He's going to go down the middle. Now, I'd like to see all of it. But it's funny how the more penalties you take, obviously, the more stats there is on your penalties. So it would actually suggest it's an advantage. The sample space is bigger. If you're a one-off penalty taker and nobody knows what you're going to do, whereas if you take a rake of penalties, they can do their stats on you and they say, right, he's hit 10 penalties, 6 have gone to the right, 3 have gone to the left, and he put 1 down the middle.
Statement from Billy Sharp just in the last 15 minutes. One mindless idiot ruined what was an unbelievable night of football. Congratulations to Nottingham Forest on their victory and good luck in the final. As an ex-Forest player, I will not let one scumbag ruin my respect for the Forest fans. Incredibly proud to be captain of this group of Sheffield United fans. They gave their all and can hold their heads up high. We will be back and go again. Thanks for all your messages and support after the incident. And then there's a picture of the team in the huddle afterwards as well.
Yeah, as I said, like he's a class act, Billy Sharp. He wasn't involved last night. He's been injured. He's obviously one of the senior players in the squad, so he was in the dugout in the technical area, kind of just looking out onto the pitch, and then he gets, as I said, blindsided with it. And it's so cowardly to do that as well. But it could have been a lot worse.
What do you think should be the punishment for the club?
I think the club are going to get fined, and then that guy. I mean, he's up. Like, he got arrested on suspicion of assault, and then I would imagine he's never going to set foot in the City ground again. But should he be banned from all grounds? Can they do that?
Yeah, I mean, I also think that like the club, you know, they need to pay more for stewarding on the night to make sure that there is no pitch invasion.
Yeah,
and they need to be punished for this, so that the fans police the next time and go, that was such a serious thing. Like, I think they shouldn't be allowed to have away fans for a large portion of next season.
Yeah, well, look, I'd say the fact that Forest were pointing out to fans before the game, don't invade the pitch, you know, it draws attention to it. But there would have been a pitch invasion if they didn't say it anyway. But they just hoped that their message would be heard. But yeah, like you've seen iconic pitch invasions before, but I don't know. I think things have changed in the last few years. I think social media has changed things where people think it'll be a bit of crack to rough up an opposition player or something. Let's get it on. But this guy has gone way too far.
Yeah, social media and cocaine. That's the problem. OTB AM is brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. Okay, that's all golf. What a beautiful day. I'm feeling alive, says Jarhead Odama. So there you go. That's all we need. Phil, good stuff. Who's going to go down?
I think Leeds could go. Burnley, I'd say...
You're coming off your Burnley spot?
Yeah, like if Burnley get a point from their last 2 games, they'll finish ahead of Leeds. I can't see Leeds getting anything against Brentford. And
Are Brentford not finished?
They are, but it's their last home game of the season. And there's a bit of history with Brentford and Leeds. Ivan Toney, just look that up. And then Newcastle, to me, looked like the celebrations were the other night. Like they had their last home game. They beat Arsenal. You know, Amanda Staveley was there. Hugs all round. They rock up to Turf Moor.
The Queen of the North.
Yeah, they'll replace the statue with Amanda Staveley. But yeah, I just fear for Leeds. Like I just don't see how they're going to beat Brentford. Maybe a draw will be good enough, but it's all on that Villa Burnley game tomorrow is massive.
All right, Phil, good stuff. Thanks very much for that.
Yes,
OTB AM brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. Tomorrow morning we'll be joined by Republic of Ireland Under-21 International Gavin Kilkenny. Alan Quinlan. Tommy Rooney is back with Football Pod Talk. We have the 4th episode of Have You Seen with Joseph Conroy. Right now we'll leave you with athletics journalist Cathal Dennehy, who joined Johnny on last night's show to talk about the current state of athletics in Ireland. See you tomorrow.
I was talking just before 8 o'clock about these headlines. So this is Eamon Sweeney in the Sindo on Sunday, going backwards in a hurry in relation to Irish athletics. And Cathal Dennehy's piece today in the Irish Examiner, record-breaking feats papering over the cracks in Irish athletics. So I kind of plugged this piece before Cahill's coming on now, but it just starts with, at a time when Irish athletics in an official organisational capacity was ducking for cover, taking a very public beating, it was left to those who so long papered over its cracks, the athletes, to inject some positivity. First, there was the Irish shot put record set by Eric Favours, a 25-year-old throwing 20.07 metres in Puerto Rico last Thursday. Then there was the national 800-metre record set by Louis Sheahan in Belfast on Saturday, the Leavale athlete clocking 1:59.42 to edge Ciaran McGean in a thriller. Then came the best of the lot, the 50.7 400-metre run by Rashida Leke in Texas on Sunday. The Dubliner now the fastest Irish woman of all time at 60, 200, 300 and 400 metres, all at the age of 19. Maybe it's all a coincidence, maybe it's not, but the thing the 3 senior record breakers have in common is they're all based abroad. Cathal, that, I don't know, this piece for me was simmering with anger.
It was. Yeah, I suppose anger, but I would say anger that's kind of transmitted on behalf of the Irish athletics community, really. I mean, I could sit here all night and probably rant, but my opinion essentially is worthless. But what I suppose I try to do at times in the writing is transmit a feeling amongst the Irish athletics community about the current structures that are in place. And I'm 34 now. And I joined the club in 1997, and I've been listening to this for 25 years, basically the same story again and again when it comes to Irish athletics. We do always have good performers, and we have international performers, athletes who punch way above their weight given the support levels and given our population size in what is a truly global sport. But anytime you look at it and say, are we getting these world-class athletes, the likes of Thomas Barr, the likes of Fiona McCormack, because of whatever system or supports are in place, or are we getting them in spite of it? Now, probably in spite might be a harsh word, but I think it's just pure coincidence that there is some sort of system behind it, or if there is any system behind it, because what a lot of people would say when you look at our champions, this goes back to the 80s, the 90s, 2000s, and the last decade, the best athletes Ireland produces typically have the least to do with Athletics Ireland. And that's an undeniable trend. Going back to David Gillick, Derval O'Rourke, Rob Heffernan, Thomas Barr, whoever it is, Sonia O'Sullivan, they go and build their own high-performance systems. And it was kind of an interesting parallel that off the back of that Tokyo review, which, to be honest, hammered Athletics Ireland 2 weeks ago and hammered the structures within athletics, that we would have 3 athletes come out and break national senior records. National senior records do not fall easily. A lot of them go back 20, 30, 40 years, and 3 fell on one weekend. But again, when you look at the 3 athletes, Louise Shanahan's based over in England, in Oxford, doing a PhD over there with a British coach she has. Rashida is based in Texas for the last year and a half with one of the best sprint coaches in the world, in Edric Floriel. And then Eric Favours, obviously, he's New York born and raised, and he's always been based over there, and he qualifies through an Irish grandparent. Now, obviously, we have a lot of good home-based athletes, but it's certainly never been a barrier to success in athletics by Irish athletes going abroad to progress their career. And if anything, the trend shows that they tend to do a whole lot better when they're abroad within professional structures.
this really intrigued me. And again, this is referenced in Eamon Sweeney's piece also, but you write that the decision by Sport Ireland to punish athletics for its underperformance in Tokyo might be understandable, but it's also deeply unsettling. It hints at a move to mimic the British approach, whereby money is funneled into sports where medals are easier to farm through finances, regardless of participation figures or the number of medals won outside the Olympics. This seems almost like a populist thing, because, I mean, you know, fair enough, we're doing extremely well in rowing at the moment, but like, it's almost like athletics is being punished if we don't win a gold.
It is exactly like that, and this is the biggest kind of evidence we've seen of that trend within the Irish Sport Ireland, I suppose, philosophy. And I think a lot of this goes back to that 10-year plan for sport in Ireland that set massive targets. I think it's that we're going to be a nation by 2028 that wins between 8 and 10 Olympic medals at each Olympics. And I think this decision spawns from that, where they've sat down, they've looked at it and they've said, athletics, fair play Thomas Barr, fair play Kieran McGean, fair play to the mixed relay. You know, you're all in the top 8 or 10 in the world in a global sport that's so deeply contested. It's as tough to rise to the top 8 or 10 in the world as it would be, say, as a left back in soccer. You know, are you in the top 8 or 10 left backs? You know, that's the equivalent of what Kieran McGean and Thomas Barr are achieving. But the fact that they don't win medals at global level yet, anyway, obviously Thomas Barr was about an inch away from a medal in Rio, means that athletics gets punished and they get punished. I mean, Thomas Barr is not on the highest level of funding at the moment. He's considered international. The other night he finished 3rd in the Diamond League, which is, you know, the top tier of the sport. The Olympic silver medalist was 2nd. The Olympic bronze medalist was ahead of him. And yet Thomas Barr is not considered good enough to get the full €40,000 funding. And it's not a case, I hate sports one-upmanship in general, but when you look across the board and you say there are performers, whether it's in sports that aren't truly global, that might have 10 to 20 to 30 nations competing seriously in them, that Ireland are winning medals in, or say in the Paralympics where there is, you know, not that depth. Let's be honest, there's so many categories that we have come about medals so much easier in that department than we do in athletics, but yet the athletes get punished again. And as Cian McManaman, a race walker, put out there on, I think it was on Twitter a couple of weeks ago, he said, you know, when it comes to this, athletes underperform at the championships, the sport gets its funding cut, the athletes themselves will get their funding cut. But where are the repercussions for those within high performance, or the people who are kind of overseeing or developing those structures? You know, does the CEO of Athletics Ireland get a 20% pay reduction? Does the high performance director get a pay reduction? Does the same thing happen to them?
I think you've probably answered that question without answering, have you?
Yeah. Exactly.
But it's like we spoke about Eritrea there, and you know what happened to Gilroy today. So in North Korea, what they do is if somebody goes to jail, they send 3 generations to jail as well, because effectively it's punishment to the entire family. So it's like one athlete's being punished for the fact that maybe some other athletes aren't reaching their peak, despite the fact that the best Irish athletes aren't even in Ireland anyway.
Yeah, it just seems so unnecessary. And I mean, they did have a bad Olympics. There's no denying that, you know, and like I was writing about it myself. And, you know, sometimes the coverage, obviously, of athletics isn't what it is in soccer. You know, it's generally softer, and, you know, they're non-professional athletes. They're juggling full-time jobs, and, you know, they're doing their damnedest to qualify. And sometimes when they go out there and get absolutely blown out of it in the heats and trail in last, your heart would nearly break from them. And, you know, you don't want to be criticising them, but at the same time, when Athletics Ireland set out targets, this amount of top 8s, this amount of top 16s, this amount of top 24s, and we didn't come near it in any of those 3 categories at the last Olympics, questions need to be asked. But as one coach said to me when I asked him, you know, before I was coming on tonight, is there any kind of points he'd make? He'd said, basically, the point to make is that nothing's going to change. And that's a coach who's been around for the last 30 years in the sport, embedded in the sport. And again, my opinion on this is not worth too much, but I'm just trying to transmit what so many I talk to in Irish athletics say, that they bang their head against the walls and they say, this is the same conversation we had after the Athens Olympics, the same one we had after the Atlanta Olympics. Where are the structures, and what are the structures, and are the structures having any effect? And I think in a sport like rowing, where it's smaller and you can centralise that small group of high calibre athletes under a really good coach like Dominic Casey, you can see the effect of that. But in athletics, it's so spread out, it's so vast, there's so many events within the sport, that it's always going to be impossible to do that in a way that you can truly judge it. And I have a certain sympathy as well for the people working in Athletics Ireland, because you're trying to sort of mimic these sports like rowing and boxing that have had such success, but in a sport where the same thing is pretty much impossible to do.
Yeah, we don't obviously have anyone from Athletics Ireland on, and even as Cathal says there, I mean, you know, these issues are always complex. It's never, I guess, black and white. But I suppose from my perspective of coming from, you know, a soccer position, despite soccer being the biggest participating sport in Ireland, Cathal, facilities are a joke, really, you know, despite all the money in this country. So what are facilities like in athletics? And another point you mentioned here is just that all these really good coaches, and we go back to Jerry Kieran, obviously, and you say the truth is it's not money that makes the likes of Shane McCormick, Noel Morrissey, Phelim Kelly or Jeremy Lyons show up trackside several times a week. They did it long before they had Olympians in their care, but there's something absurd about a system that sees the dozens of hours they dedicate each week go unrewarded, all as the physios, psychologists, nutritionists and high performance employees are paid. Now, this is a bit of an elephant in the room.
It is. And look, again, let's I guess qualify this by saying that it's extremely hard for Athletics Ireland to work out a system, and not just Athletics Ireland, there's other sports as well, Sport Ireland in general. It's hard for them to work out a system whereby which coaches do you fund, because coaches are so spread out across the country. But I think the time has come, and this can't go on any longer. I'd consider it, like, whether it's direct or indirect, an exploitation of Irish coaches who put so much time in, because whatever about the club coach who stumbles across a really good athlete and suddenly has an Olympian on their hands, like those four, I just picked them out, but there's many more like those four coaches around the country who are coaching at Olympic level. They coach to a professional level despite juggling other work. Some of them have full-time jobs, some of them have families, partners, and speaking to them, you know, at different points over the years, I've spoken to them all probably individually, along with a lot of other coaches, and your heart would break for them, and your admiration just grows for them when you realise that, you know, they've had to leave their kids behind, they've had to miss so many things for their kids' graduations and things like that, or they've had to go away on training camps, they've had to barter with their employers to get time off work. And then there's just something very messed up that, say, a coach of a Thomas Barr or a Nadia Power or a Sean Tobin, some of our best athletes, that their coaches have to pay money, spend money on the sport, and these are the most important part of our Olympic athletes' performances. And then that same athlete will go into the Sport Ireland Institute. They might have a psychology appointment. They might have a nutritionist appointment. They might have a strength and conditioning appointment. And all these people who are working as professionals, as they should be, are paid. And yet we can't find a way to pay our coaches. And, you know, Jack Chambers or whoever can sit there every press conference that happens and say we're ploughing this much more into sport. But really, you know, it's all very well and good to fund the athletes, but behind every athlete, and the reason for all those good athletes, the biggest reason is some coach who found them, whether it was at the age of 10, at the age of 16, or whether they took over in their 20s and coaching them to a professional standard despite amateur levels of support.
Yeah, in a totally unrelated matter, Liverpool have equalised. It's 1-1, Minamino with the goal, and so that obviously the fight back is on at St Mary's. In a broader context, Carl, like, do we invest enough at government level in sport in this country, full stop? We have masses of money coming in from taxes into this country from various sources, but our facilities across the board are so far behind a first world country. Now, you know, if you have a young Olympian who wants to, you know, be the new Nadia Power or whatever, say, for example, in rural Ireland tomorrow, what does he or she do in terms of making that step up? Is there a barrier to his or her making that progress because of facilities and coaching straight away?
I think I'll speak only on athletics here because God knows I don't know enough about anything else. But in terms of athletics, I really don't think facilities are an issue in Ireland at all. And, you know, you have to tip your hat here to Sport Ireland. They have upgraded the facilities over the years. You know, there was a long time in the 90s where Nina was the only indoor track in Ireland. And, you know, it was often referred to as a cow shed, and it was not a suitable facility. But Athlone got it together and built a brilliant world-class facility down there. And then Abbottstown, obviously, they have a beautiful track there on the Sport Ireland campus. I guess facilities are an issue if you're based rurally, and that was one of the things the Tokyo review threw up, was that there's not enough supports for athletes who are not based near Dublin. And given they can't fund athletes to be full-time athletes, or sometimes even part-time athletes, a lot of athletes have to juggle full-time jobs. To ask them to do that while living in Dublin, paying Dublin rents to avail of the facilities at the Sport Ireland campus is a bit much, really, at times in a sport where there's not much reward. But yeah, I just think athletes, in terms of the overall investment, I mean, we're not bad internationally, but we are always comparing ourselves to New Zealand. And when you do put the figures of New Zealand's investment in sport alongside our investments in sport, it's, we're made to look very ordinary. And it's no accident that when you look at the number of Olympic medals we win, New Zealand also makes us look very ordinary, because there is a direct and it's a causative relationship between investment in sport and Olympic medals. And it's not just about Olympic medals, because let's face it, Kelly Harrington or Paula Donovan win a medal, we all love it for a weekend, but then we go back to our daily lives. But the spin-off effect of every bit of investment in sport has been shown time and again, whether it's inspiration or through those grassroots programs, to be paid back several times over in terms of the benefits to the healthcare system. And after 2 years where we've all been going on about the health of the nation and doing everything, you would like to see a bit more impact in that, a bit more put your money where your mouth is in that regard, in terms of stand over sport. And like they've cut Athletics Ireland's funding for the next few years at a time of rapid inflation. They haven't cut it, they've remained the same.
Which is effectively,
given there's a cost of living crisis going on, that constitutes a reduction. So your athletes are going to be worse off for that.
I find it strange, and I have images of Shane Ross, obviously, while the women's hockey team is beside him, announcing such and such, and great fanfare and all that, because it was quite a popular thing to do at the time. Is there actually political love for athletics?
I think there is. I mean, I think people can appreciate athletics, but it's definitely a bandwagon sport. Our championships are once, twice, maybe 3 times a year if you add the cross country and indoors. And people do care about athletics for those weeks, but then tend not to care for the rest of it. But I know this is something everyone in a minority sport, or even in many women's sports, say, was that if people get exposed to it more, they do like it. And I think history has always shown that the Irish public does love athletics, does genuinely love athletics. I mean, even an example of that, I tweeted out a few videos last weekend that I was just screen recording of Irish athletes running over in Highgate, and Dean Casey of Ennis broke the under 20 10,000 metre Irish record, and I think it had 50,000 views or something, and there was a few other videos that were getting 5,000, 10,000, 20,000 views, and that's just a bad video that's on Twitter. But I suppose the point there is that if you bring it to them, people will be like, oh, that's great, someone broke a record. And every time you see it, whether it's an under 20 championship, a European indoor championship, European cross country, if an Irish athlete wins a medal, there is a huge response. And we had 8,000 people in Abbottstown in December for the European cross country on a horrible day that started out in a place where you can't get parking to save your life. And the way that was supported showed that the Irish public, if you give them access to athletics and you show them athletics on TV, do care about athletics. But we all know, RTE hasn't showed a world championship in decades, and they're not. I don't think they're sending anyone to this year's world championships in Oregon. So I suppose when that's the attitude to the most popular Olympic sport from the state broadcaster, it's no accident that the everyday sports fan on the street stops caring pretty quickly.
Yeah, and you can see in Irish football, our national DNA is changing a bit for the better as well. And I presume there is a lot of potential in running in this country, massive potential if we can get the coaching right and somehow find a few bob for these coaches.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it has to happen. Maybe it's a thing whereby if you fund an athlete, if you give them 20 grand a year, then it's just 10% automatically on top goes to the coach. So whoever coaches that athlete would be getting 2 grand for each athlete they'd coach at that level. I think, and that's something that those little things, it's the few grand. It's they're not looking for money. They're not looking for full-time salaries out of this, most of them. But it's indicative that some of the athletes or some of the coaches who were working in a full-time capacity were essentially driven out of this country because they couldn't get work in a full-time capacity. I'm thinking of John Coughlin there, who couldn't operate as a full-time athletics coach in Ireland, or even a part-time athletics coach, was training speed and strength and conditioning with me GAA for years, and then just got an opportunity to work in China with athletes on a full-time basis, went there, got another opportunity to work in America last year or 2 years ago, and he coached the Olympic champion, the women's 100-metre hurdles. And John's expertise is now of no significance to Irish sport. It's just been lost because he couldn't get supported here. He couldn't earn a living from coaching here. So what happens? Someone else recognises and appreciates his knowledge and is willing to pay him elsewhere. And then he's coaching an Olympic champion. Yeah, it's massive parallels to soccer, how it's been in this country as well there. This really struck me as well. It's actually the last sort of couple of pairs in your piece. Ireland has 3 reigning European under-20 champions, which itself is obviously to be lauded. Aleke, Nick Griggs, who's an amazing story as well, and Keane McPhillips.
Sitting in a press event a few years ago with Adeleke and her mother, I can recall a member of the Irish media trying their best to put the teenager off going to the US, telling her she'd be run into the ground, that it would ruin her career. By ignoring that and choosing the University of Texas and one of the world's best coaches in Edric Floril, she's shown that to be utter nonsense. Now, if you put utter nonsense into a piece, and Carl's come to the end of his piece there, I think he's still a bit angry. Her previous coaches, Johnny Fox and Daniel Kilgallen, did a brilliant job in an unpaid capacity to nurture her talent before she left. But it says so much about the system in Ireland that the best thing you'd hope for Adeleke's future is that she has nothing to do with it.
Yeah, I suppose it speaks for itself. Obviously, it's probably laced with a bit of anger. I woke up on the wrong side of the bed yesterday morning, I think.
Sometimes those articles are best, though.
They tend to be. But yeah, it is genuinely the way I feel with a lot of US-based athletes. And a lot of people will moan about the US NCAA system because some talented juniors might have went over and they might have been run into the ground at bad colleges who were just trying to get their pound of flesh out of them. But people often talk about that in Irish athletics, but then they don't talk so much about the Irish athletes who were going to DCU or UCD or Trinity or UCC, wherever it is, and then their talent, whether through injury, maybe they got an injury and there was no physio support, they had no proper coaching, they didn't have a proper training group the way they do in the States, they weren't enjoying it the way there is that team ethic much more in the NCAA system, and they just drifted out of the sport. Or maybe they did get their degree, they went in, they got their job with Ernst & Young or whoever it is. They were working 9 to 6 and commuting, and then they just realised that 100-mile weeks are not compatible with full-time work. I mean, it's something that Pat Hooper, the late great Olympian from 1980, the great Raheny clubman, often said like that. You know, people often go on about the good old days and we worked full-time jobs and ran 120 miles a week. But Pat Hooper said the game has changed, economics have changed, and these days employers want their pound of flesh. And you know, if someone's going off to run a race in Belgium at the weekend, they don't care so much, and they don't care that you're, you know, need 10 hours sleep and need to run at lunchtime and need to go to the physio in the afternoon. You know, it's like, well, if you're not going to do this work, we'll find someone else to do it. And full-time work for a lot of people is not compatible. And that brings me to another point that I kind of just wanted to bring up, because I think this is something that needs to happen in Ireland, is that we start looking towards the system in Germany or Poland. I mean, it's there in Russia, Ukraine, lots of Eastern European nations do this, whereby top-level athletes are kind of married with the civil service system. I mean, in Germany, it could be the police, it could be the customs, it could be the military. They go through the educational systems much like we go to the Guards in Templemore, but the athletes are given concessions in terms of training, given time off when needed. And then they graduate, they start a career. And say in Germany, you're allowed to get reduced service hours by 33% if you're an elite athlete. So imagine that for an Irish athlete. Instead of working 40 hours a week, you're asked to work 25 hours a week. And yeah, there might be the odd lad in the office groaning, but the reality is that those 15 hours that you're still being paid for, you're out there training, you're going to the physio, and you're going to major international championships wearing an Irish kit and trying to win medals. So whatever it is, that money that they're losing out on you not being at work is being repatriated, I suppose. Because, you know, there's many ways to serve your country, and whether it's the civil service or the Guards or the Army, we need to start looking at that. And I pulled up a couple of stats on this point, and in terms of the German Olympic medals won in the Summer Games since 1992, 44% of them have been won by athletes who were from the military support groups, who were officially employed by the German military. And then if you look at Poland, what they were doing, of the 215 athletes who represented Poland at last year's Olympics, 61 of them were soldiers in the Polish army. Now, they're not obviously out hiking over the hills with backpacks, you know, they're given office jobs, the elite athletes. But that's something we really need to look at in Ireland, because sports like athletics, they're not going to get more money. It's pretty clear they're not going to be given more money by Sport Ireland the way things are without winning Olympic medals. So we need to start being creative and think, how can we, I guess, set them up with employers and set up some sort of system through the civil service where they can train as semi-professionals, if not professionals. Because right now, a lot of people come out of college, 22, 23, they look at that choice and they say, this just isn't worth it. And one final point on this, I was talking to an Olympian last year at one point, and she'd been to every championship under the sun in athletics, and, you know, didn't win any medals, isn't at that quite level, but is good enough to always qualify. And she said if she was talking to a 16 or 17-year-old athlete, she'd tell them not to bother. Don't bother following her path, because, you know, she's there in her late 20s, early 30s, no savings, way behind everyone else her age in terms of career progression, and basically is just chugging along on a shoestring budget. And when you have someone who made the Olympics saying that about the way things are, that they tell a 16 or 17-year-old not to bother, that speaks an awful lot about how well we actually support our athletes.
Is that the nature of a capitalist world, that, you know, it doesn't pay, so that's how it is, or is we just need more funding?
I mean, I think the funding thing is an easy solution, but obviously it's not the only solution. And I think we do have to accept that funding won't just be there always. And, you know, it's not, we can't just pull money out of a tree. The whole country is struggling, and let's face it, there's bigger priorities than us trying to win an Olympic medal or a European medal. But I think the big things that can be done, I mean, I think with coaching, yes, I think that has to be a simple money solution, because there's so many athletes right now or so many coaches who are doing it through the sheer goodness of their hearts and the sheer love for the sport. And these are people who could go into other sports. You know, they could train, like I take Shane McCormick there, the coach of Phil Healy, the Irish 100-metre record holder. I mean, he could be employed by any number of sports, whether it's Leinster Rugby, he's done work with Tipperary, Wexford Hurlers, and he'd be well recompensed for that work, or recompensated. He does his work in athletics, and what's he get for it? Nothing. Only the goodwill.
OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating.